Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
We are rolling.
Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Today's guest is Neville Nev Hyman. Nev is a passionate surfer, shaper, business owner, entrepreneur, and humanitarian, conservationist, and much, much more. Nev gained popularity in the surf industry as one of the most prolific surfboard shapers throughout the 80s and 90s with his company Nev Surfboards and Nev Future Shapes. Nev's shaping journey led to the creation of the surfboard company FireWire in 2006, which is now the industry leader in working towards zero waste manufacturing and environmentally friendly surfboard materials. His most recent venture, NevHouse, converts everyday waste products into affordable structures, housing and shelter that can be erected within 7 days. The NevHouse system has already been used to house families affected by natural disaster and support impoverished communities. Indirectly or directly, the NevHouse project has brought attention to the global homelessness crisis. Nev's accolades are vast. However, most recently he was awarded the prestigious Entrepreneur of the Year by Prince Andrew, Duke of York, at St James Palace in London for his pitch of the NevHouse project and concept. As a surfer myself, I was super stoked to lock in a conversation with the legendary surfboard shaper and craftsman Neville Hyman. But after gaining a deeper understanding of the NevHouse concept over the last month and witnessing Nev's sincere conviction in his mission to reduce waste and house humanity, it has become very obvious to me that this is a man driven by something much deeper. Whilst deceptively simple in its technicalities, to me it is plain to see that NevHouse is a humanitarian project with the potential to positively impact upon millions of people globally and dramatically reduce the impact of waste on the environment. I feel that Nev is the epitome of someone who has allowed his personal values and moral compass to guide his life's work, and the result is an enriched and passionate human seeking to give back to the world. He's still very much connected to the core of his inspiration, the ocean and riding waves. He's definitely still frothing. Nev, welcome.
Shannon,
how are you?
Thank you so much. I really, wow. I'm not going to say anything on that. Thank you so much. But let me say, what an inspirational, unbelievable environment that we're sitting in right now at the Green School in Ubud in Bali. If anyone listening to this gets a moment of time and goes online and has a look at this unbelievable community of teaching youth about nature, about life in general, I've seen nothing like it. As a budding architect that I never became, because I became a surfboard shaper, to walk around here is just truly inspirational. So congratulations to the founders and the people behind this amazing school.
What's really stood out for you this morning?
The peacefulness, and that goes kind of almost a cliche, that this would have to be that, surely. That I'm sitting here looking out and I see buildings that are just so perfectly built into the environment and in a topography that would blow your mind, with rivers and creeks and mountains and bamboo and more bamboo and architecture that I've never seen before.
Yeah, it is. I never get sick of it personally. Now, I've got a really important question to start. What was Prince Andrew like?
Oh my God, he is sensational. And no, seriously, I've had a number of really funny moments with His Royal Highness, where I've really seen his incredible sense of humour, but with that dour royal, oh really, is that what you think, Nev? With that tone, but you're just cracking up inside. So he's wonderful. The Duchess of York is equally wonderful. and their lovely daughters. I've had the opportunity, the crazy opportunity, as a surfboard shaper from the Gold Coast, to actually have tea in the Royal Lodge with His Royal Highness and the Duchess of York and Princess Eugenie, and I'd met Princess.
How did this come about? I don't know.
So, how it came about was that I was invited by a very good friend of mine, Jane Ferguson, who just so happens to be the sister of Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess. And she said, "Nev, I love what you're doing." I met Jane through her son, who's a very good bodyboarder in the Canary Islands, and she she invited me to come to Sydney and she said, "Nev, you need to do this thing called Pitch at Palace." And I said, "Oh, what's that?" So I did, and I rocked up to Bond University on the Gold Coast, and I thought I'd give it a shot, and didn't really take it too seriously until I arrived and saw His Royal Highness with his entourage there, and I went, "Oh, hang on, this is serious. I should have taken this more seriously." So, to cut a long story short, did Bond University, Wollongong University, and then the Government House in Sydney, and won through to each round, and I was one of 3 to be sent to St James Palace in London to pitch in front of ultra-high net worths and key people inside St James Palace. And it was just remarkable. 25,000 applicants, hundreds of companies from around the world that actually pitched all over the world, and 14 were chosen, and I was in that chosen few, and I did my gig for 3 minutes, and the trumpets come up at the end, so you can't go over 3 minutes. It's really quite funny. And I won the thing, which was just really strange and bizarre.
What was the feedback you were getting, like, in terms of why you won it?
Well, it's a very easy sell. Selling the idea of taking waste from the environment and turning it into composite panels, architecturally designed with brilliance, I must say. My architect, Ken McBride, Professor Ken McBride, 10 years under Renzo Piano, expert in Indigenous housing, modular housing, designed 100-storey buildings in Dubai with incredible timber structures around them, the D1 actually. Embrace and a surfer, loves the environment, and decided to embrace NevHouse way back when we started, which I'll elaborate on later. But to have that level of expertise behind me and talk about the environment and focus on the fact that there is an unlimited demand for housing globally. It is, without question, the largest industry in the world. Trillions of dollars worth of market capital to be taken advantage of if you took it from a commercial point of view. The McKinsey report in 2014 said that there was over 250 million homes required then, and that was just for the displaced. So, hang on, what about affordable housing in first world countries? What about aged care? What about eco-resorts? What about everything else? Mining resorts, post-disaster, schools, clinics, outposts. It is endless, and the reason that is so important for NevHouse to take advantage of that, or any other company per se, is that modularity is the thing that will deal with it.
Why? Why modularity?
Modularity meaning that a NevHouse can be built in a day or 2 at the outside. We could chopper in an outpost and dump it in the middle of the jungle in PNG with water, sanitation and power. It can be built in a day or 2. Then the expat flies in, as an example, the doctor, the nurse, whatever, and in a comfortable environment are dealing with issues that in those local Indigenous areas.
So it's the mobility of it.
The mobility of it, the rapid deployment of it. From a post-disaster relief, I would hope that governments around the world would take the opportunity, and I'm going to throw an idea out which is pretty basic, and I don't want anybody to quote me on numbers, but let's just say that every NevHouse cost $10,000, maybe with an element of water, sanitation and power. Let's say it was $20,000. I don't actually care how much it is. But when the current and previous method of dealing with post-disaster relief has been glorified tents, and I'm not being critical, I'm just saying that has been the scenario. I was in Tanna Island 3 weeks after the Category 5 cyclone devastated the whole of Vanuatu. I was flown in by RAF. I was with the French Army and the Australian Army and the New Zealand. Everyone was there. all the agencies were there, and I asked the question, has anybody offered a short, mid or long-term solution to the homes and schools that have been gone? And there was deathly silence, and it was basically tension membranes, etc.
Again, that goes back to mobility, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
So are you kind of saying that like the NevHouse could be like the best triage response to a disaster, like first response to housing, but then could then just stay?
Exactly. So let's just picture 1,000 NevHouses in a facility, in multiple facilities all over the world, just waiting. They won't deteriorate because there's no maintenance or painting, rendering, concrete in a NevHouse, zero. They sit there until there's a disaster or a refugee crisis. It's mobilised. It arrives, flat pack. 1,000 people, 500 people, 200 tradies or 100 experts, whatever scenario it might be, come in and assemble those homes in situ, in country, right there, connect to water, sanitation and power, and guess what? People get dignity right there.
I heard you say that in one of your talks over the last month. I can't remember which one because I've seen you talk a couple of times now. I loved that, and actually made me reflect on how I live, and you know. But my next question is around: do you have to train people to actually, like, what's the training like to show someone how to put one of these together? Is that a challenge or?
No, because all the components of a NevHouse are modular, and they, say for example, there's three elements to a NevHouse. There are the footings, which require no concrete. They're a company called Surefoot or a screw pile, and they go in and any soil, after a soil test is done, and each one of those footings has 4 to 5 tonne of uplift. They can't be pulled out of the ground.
Can you describe it?
It's a series, it's like a glorified
like
tent pegs.
Almost like a tripod?
It's actually, the roots of a tree.
Okay,
so just picture incredible roots of a tree going down into a soil. You can't pull that tree straight out. So the beauty about it is there's no environmental footprint. So we can go in and build a community and then disassemble it and move it out, and there's no concrete. There's nothing to be taken away. So that's element number one. Element number two is the portal frame. The beauty about the ingenious and not unique architecture that Ken McBride pulled together in 2012 was that each of those portal frames are tied in with a portal frame. Sorry, each of those footings are tied in with a portal frame, which basically means that the vertical beam, going up to the roof, back down the other side, ties into each of the opposite footings. Then between the footings, the panels of NevHouse, which are exactly either 2.5 metres or 3 metres, fit perfectly within that, which then brace the portal frames. Then when the roof is put on, everything's braced, and it equates to a Category 5 scenario. And even better, our engineering company, Arup, said when we first designed the NevHouse, you almost don't need to, of course you don't need to do a seismic test, because the house, again, no concrete, it's flexible and reasonably lightweight. But this is not a temporary home in any shape or matter. When you look at the architecture of the homes that we have delivered, they're robust, they're gorgeous, they're earthy, they fit into the environment. And Ken McBride has said to me the day we designed the first house, which was a kampung for Indonesia, a 22 square metre typical home, he said, I won't even design the house for you, Nev, unless I have been with the people. Luckily, he had already done homes in Kalimantan, so he understood completely the design of a typical kampung.
Why did he say that? What was his motivation?
Beautiful, it's poetry.
Okay.
And the best example I can give you, without being too critical of the Australian government over the last 50 years, is we've completely blown it with Indigenous communities at every level. And the cost of housing is a total rort, and I don't mind people quoting me on that. The architecture is what we give them, a rectangular suburban box to be given to an Indigenous community. Now, one of the funny stories that Ken told me when we first spoke about this is I asked him the dumbest question I could ask him about Indigenous peoples in Australia. I said, why do Aboriginals break their homes apart and burn them? And we both laughed because we know we were being, respectful but having a bit of a discussion about this. And he said, Nev, you got to understand that before white man came, and I've learned a lot about Indigenous peoples in Australia and what they had agriculture, they had villages, they had everything. But guess what? The colonialists, and I'm not knocking England, because this is a long time ago, so let's just forget it.
Let's learn from it.
Let's learn from it. But they needed to destroy all evidence of the indigenous peoples to show their masters back in the UK that there was nothing here, nothing to worry about. Let's colonise this place. So my point is that white man. Then all of a sudden they had their humpies, they had their windbreaks. They were nomadic, but they took their homes with them, which I love because that's what I can do. That's what I want to do. So what happens is, all of a sudden, white man comes along, and the farmers are there, and they make they've got wire fences, so they steal the wire, they take the wire, and they become absolute experts in twisting wire, no nails, no nothing, to make humpies. Oh, and then they take the corrugated iron, so they make. So in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, the white man looked at the Aboriginals with these ugly, rotten tin corrugated iron humpies and said, they're below us, but in fact, architecturally, they were above us. They had made these incredible structures. So I said, he said, look, Ken was saying that Indigenous peoples are nomadic. So the dog dies or grandma, something happens, they have to move their home. So they just pick it up and move it over there. So then it was a case of, so when you've built, the white man comes in, builds all these rectangular homes and put them side by side. They walk in, oh, thank you, mister. Oh, good, this is my house. First of all, they don't have ownership because it's been given to them. It's been built for them, which is an argument both sides of that. Then they walk inside and they look, I can't see my neighbour. I'll knock a hole in the end of the wall. Now I can see my neighbour. Because they need to see their neighbour. They need to be far enough away to say, hey, brother, I need something. But then when they're arguing with their family, they can't be heard. Just like us. You don't want to be too close. And then the classic is you're in the house and then you hear this, and it's mother-in-law walking up the steps. And it's the son-in-law inside, and he's scared to open the door because he cannot open the door and look mother-in-law in the eye because it's taboo. Indeed, the mobs can't even, if you're from a different mob, you can't look at that other mob in the eye. Yeah. So there's so much. So my whole point, there was a long story to say that when we went to Vanuatu, we engaged an anthropologist. We had him tell us what they want.
Was it a common theme with the Indigenous?
Theme. Okay. Common theme. And it's like Ken said to me, Nev, with Aboriginals, you need to go and sit with the elders, and if it takes 2 weeks for them to tell you what they want, that's what you've got to do. Not go in there and say, this is what we're going to give you. So that's our mantra. As we travel the world and deal with, whether it's somebody living in New York City or someone living in Vanuatu, they were cannibals 100 years ago, it doesn't matter. Ask people what they want. That's what my architect has told me.
So, considering cultural sensitivity is that's at the core of it as well.
Totally.
Now, can we just go back to the actual structure itself, and can you explain the actual panel? So I've had a few questions myself around recycling as a process, and there's a lot of debate about, sometimes when waste or plastic is recycled or upcycled or repurposed, the processes can be super toxic themselves and almost counterproductive. So, is that, I noticed in one of your talk you were speaking about the variety of waste products that can be used. It's not just plastic, which is super special because waste is bigger than just plastic. So
absolutely.
So what is in these panels?
Yeah. And
why do they have a longer shelf life or a long shelf life as you described?
I'll start with saying that a thing that is on my business card: plastic is not evil. It's the improper disposal of plastic.
I love that.
Now, and if you go and speak to any polymer chemist, not a polymer manufacturer, a polymer chemist who knows his shit, knows it, they get so irritated by all these arguments that plastic is evil. So I'm finding myself in a position, a controversial position as I move forward, because there is a global movement right now by incredibly well-intentioned people, and I don't have the right yet to say what I really want to say.
Why?
Because we need a plant operating to show exactly what we can do. And that doesn't prove anything. The technology is proven. It's just a practical reality of having the facility. We've got an R&D facility in the US. That's all been done. It's all good. But to have an operating factory to prove the process and the impact that will have. Now, the reason I say it's controversial to a point is that, and again, I'm not a polymer chemist, but I've learned a lot over a period of time. And the first thing I say when I meet with waste management companies, with waste management government officials, with polymer chemists, with anybody in the field that are much smarter than I, and I say, I am the dumbest guy in the room here, please. If I'm saying anything to you that you object to, tell me right now.
That's a really smart thing to say.
Yeah. So to get down to the nitty-gritty of it, recycling requires, in most cases, for recycling plastic into things that can be sold or reused, requires either a single or maybe at best a double polymer. So there's an element of restriction in what we can use. And I'll explain that in a little bit in a minute. There are other scenarios that for recycling, such as putting plastic into road base, turning plastic into oil. Don't even get me started on incineration, because that's an absolute joke. That is a complete destruction of a very valuable resource. So let's just say there was only 3 options. Where would you rather your repurposed plastic go? Into roads, into oil, more oil, or into homes for shelter? I know where I'd put my money. So that doesn't mean to say those other options aren't equally as important. There is a global demand, an infinite demand for housing. There are solutions to road base. We don't need to almost waste our plastic to put it into roads. And I am a little bit concerned, and again, this is about, microplastics coming from being worn off the roads. And that might be a completely wrong thing to say, because I don't understand the process. But that would be my little doubt there. Oil is oil. We can get oil. Yes, we can reduce the carbon footprint by turning plastic into oil. But I don't believe it's going to be a big enough impact in the global demand for oil to really be of relevance. And you'll hear me a lot say there are many, many boutique solutions for recycling that make us feel good. It ticks our endorphins get going when we ban the plastic straw and the plastic bag, and we pick up and we do beach cleanups. Let me qualify that. I am not saying for a second that none of those scenarios are not completely and utterly worthy. They are. What I'm trying to say is there will come a time, if we get the support that we require, that I and my partners and others will be able to say that there is not the need to sort. There is not the need to actually be concerned about significant contamination. I sat with the waste management companies in Sydney during a convention recently, and I've got to add a bit of humour here. My past was in the surf industry, and I used to do trade shows in the surf industry, and it was just wonderful. There'd be wonderful people and pretty girls and surfboards and the ocean and the environment, and it was like and they still go today, obviously. FireWire still do those trade shows. So there I find myself in Sydney with waste management machines and big fat truckers with trucker hats on, and it was like, what happened to my life? I'm now doing waste management trade shows. They're not as exciting, let me say.
Glamorous?
Yeah. So anyway, I'm witnessing a panel, and there was a number of experts, and one of the members on the panel was a waste management company in Australia, and he literally stood up. This is a year, 14 months after the China sword went up, which was stopping the plastic waste going to China because of contamination. China did it 4 years before, in 2014. It was called the Green Wall. They warned the world, stop sending us your crap. Stop taking advantage of us. The world didn't listen, and guess what? The world's paying right now. And I'm saying, thank you, China. Please. Thank you. Because now we have to make the decisions to keep it in country. So, where was I going? You
were talking about the processes of making the structures and the modules. And
sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's
You
all
can
right.
edit this out.
Yeah.
Bit out. Because I was going to somewhere with that. So we're taking. So now we have a situation where we must do something with all of this plastic.
Yeah, and like this is where I'm really interested, because, I was at the Parlay talk the other night, and you're actually one of the few people I've heard just come out and change the mindset to plastic's not bad, it's a resource. And it's actually one of the most realistic approaches I've seen, combined with a humanitarian housing purpose. It's quite intriguing. And that's what I think you're maybe having... Are you having controversy around the fact that you are saying plastic's not the problem, it's a resource, and...
Well,
but what I guess what
Yeah.
I'm going to get at here
Yeah.
is, does that mean we just encourage everyone to keep making plastic?
Okay, so I'm going to touch on that. That's a really good point. And again, I'm not aiming to be controversial. I didn't start this journey to be an environmentalist, underscored.
Mm-hmm.
I started this because I invested in a plastics recycling company in 2004, just because I thought it'd be a good thing to do. Then I got stuck with the company in 2010 because the guy that I invested in for the Southeast Asian region died, and I had to take it over. This is when I was growing FireWire. This is when FireWire were relying on me as the designer for all the pro surfers to do it, and here I am. And in fact, I was here in 2012 at the same event. Michelle Perez came second on my boards in the event, and my team in California from FireWire were saying, "Nev, what are you doing? Where's your focus, man?" And they were right. My focus was on this plastics recycling company, not on my surfboards.
Is that because you were stressing about the finances of it? Or
because I'd invested too much into it.
Okay, but look, I was going to get to that. Like, where was the concept conceived? So you're saying that you had FireWire, it was all going really well, you had some good surfers on your team, you invested in something that you thought may be a money spinner later on, and then it wasn't going great, and then is this when the idea was conceived?
This is the journey side of it, and that is that at a point in time, I have actually sold a plant to a listed company in Papua New Guinea for $15 million, and they paid us $200K up front. Then that was the year of the elections in Papua New Guinea, another typical issue with government. So we were done. I was going, hallelujah, great, I'm out. I've done my bit, back to my surfboards, back to FireWire. And then the deal fell over because the general manager of that company was a Highlander, and he decided to run for governor. It had nothing to do with the company, which was called JET, Julian Environmental Technology, which was out of Europe. A very robust way of taking plastic and turning it into and intruding the molasses of molten plastic, molten by friction, into a mould. So all of a sudden, I'm on the road again going, I've got to sell shipping pallets and hunks of wood replacement products. Very sexy, taking waste out of the environment. Very uncool, making shipping pallets. So I couldn't get investors. So all of a sudden, I'm sitting in Burleigh with my lovely Karen Donald here, who's been with me from the start. I'm sitting in Burleigh, and a guy shows me a drawing of a house that was a kampung, 22 square metres, concrete slab, tinder brick wall, frame and tiled roof. I thought, hang on a sec, we can make that out of these materials. So I came home, hooked up with Ken McBride, R-Up, and designed the original NevHouse. Okay. So, but I know we can edit this, so I just want to go back to something now. So my point before was, so I was leading to something, and that was I was in this audience. So there I was in this audience in Sydney with a panel, and a waste management company guy gets up and says, because of the Chinese sword and because of the lack of action by our government, waste management companies are going to go broke in Australia, and there will be rubbish in the streets. Watch this space. Because he said we need to sort better and we need to remove contamination. Now, I'm sorry. I'm just a normal person living in Australia, conscientious enough. So my demographic and this demographic here at this school are conscientious enough to make the difference. But I'm sorry, let's just be a little bit realistic here. The demographics below us are going to be less inclined to do the right thing, and the really low, the poor are going to do nothing because it's day by day. The rich, I'm sorry, in some cases, couldn't give a rat's ass anyway because they're doing their own thing. Someone else is going to deal with it.
Until it has a direct impact.
Until it, and that's exactly very good point, because now it's having a direct impact. Every time I'm a subscriber to Nat Geo, and I get amazing articles now about the plastic in the environment, and we're almost overwhelmed with the information we're getting about what's happening in the environment, which is a wonderful thing, because now there is a ground movement. There's a bigger movement toward cleaning up the environment from plastic than there is in the need to consider the issue of housing, the need for affordable housing. The focus, when we first started this project, our focus was we need to solve the problem. Housing humanity is our moniker.
Love that.
Yeah, and I was doing presentations all over the world and putting pictures up of the pretty little girls in Vanuatu saying, home, everybody needs one. Why should we have a home when these people don't? We have a responsibility. And by the way, we can build homes out of recycled plastic. Now I flipped it. Now it's clean up the environment, and by guess what? We can actually make composite panels from CRPP, which is composite recycled plastic panels, or CRAP for short.
I love it. Can you please give us a quick description of those panels?
Yeah.
So the process that goes in. So I have an understanding myself, but I want to hear you relay that because I feel like it's probably one of the most clean and sustainable methods of upcycling that I've heard.
Really interesting because when I speak to a lot of other recyclers, and even yesterday I got a call from a recycler in Indonesia who warned me that it was going to be difficult to get some plastics, the volume you might receive. And I'm thinking, hang on, how is that possible? But then when you dig deeper, as I said earlier, most recyclers have only access to some polymers. All the other polymers they can't touch. There's 7 codes of plastic.
Gotcha.
1 to 6 is all the stuff we kind of use every day, and 7 is everything else, if that makes sense. Google it online, you'll see what each of those codes are used for. Number 1 is PET. Number 2 is HDPE and things like that. So the point about that is that what they're really saying is we're taking all the stuff that you're going to want, and I'm saying, no, I want all the other stuff. In fact, I don't even want PET.
How can you use that? Like, how are you allowed to use that then? Like,
because
that's what I'm curious about.
Okay, I'll give you a practical example. To prove what I have been saying in relation to this, there's 2 prime examples. One would be agricultural film. Now, that's a single polymer.
Gotcha.
That's out in the environment in Australia, in the US, everywhere in the world, and it's what they wrap hay bales in, strawberry farms, all that sort of stuff. After a period of time, they've got to get rid of that. It's most likely covered in pesticides, mud, rocks, etc. So what happens in Australia? It gets buried or burnt, right? So we got a pile of that. We shredded it, washed it, cleaned it, put it into our system. Great. The second pile, we shredded it, didn't wash it, didn't clean it, put it into our system. It was better.
Okay, so it's encapsulated in the system.
So I'll explain that after the second example, which is we went to a MRF, a materials recovery facility in the US, and we said, divert all of the plastic that's going into that MRF. This is everyday municipal waste that we use every day that goes into our yellow bin, or in fact, what the people in the village here use every day. They're very similar plastics. It's just everyday plastic. It's not commercial industrial plastic, it's everyday plastic. So what we have is a situation where all this plastic's going into a big bin. It's contaminated. It's got peanut butter in it, it's got oil, it's got shampoo, it's got stuff in it. So all that got ground and shredded and particleized and put into a silo or into a big bin.
No chemical involvement?
No, just take it as it is, put the soft plastics in the shredder, put the hard plastics in the grinder, a little bit more complex than that, but basically that's what happens. Then we did a test on what that mix was. I was told 80%, let's just say 70%. 70% of that mix was polyethylene and polypropylene. Those 2 plastics are regarded as reasonably the safe plastics. We live and breathe it every day. Yep. I'm not saying you do here in the green school, but hey, you get in your car, you go to you're in your house, you got polyethylene in the carpet, it's please not let ourselves get our knickers in a twist about polymers being in a composite panel that's being used for a house, when in fact every day, and you go to airports and planes and cars and automobiles, it's everywhere, plastics with us. Before I go any further, I just want to make a quote BASF. BASF is one of the largest chemical companies in the world. They put out a notice, we responded to it. Now we're putting in a submission to BASF because BASF have pulled together 30 of the largest plastics companies in the world, or related companies, and they put together $1 billion US to solve the problem of plastic in the environment. They made it very clear to me, and it's online, go and check it out, there's going to be at least a 40% increase in plastic production in the next 5 years. So we have to consider the fact that plastic is not going anywhere in a hurry. One day we may find an amazing plastic that will be biodegradable, or find a worm that will eat it all, because I know all that's there.
You're not saying that we don't fight the reduction in that production. You're not saying that.
No, we can't fight that. But population will make that happen whether we like it or not. Growth in population, global needs. The world, not just from Plastic is not just being used, as we well know, just for convenience. It's used, it saves lives every day of the week. There's so many avenues of plastic that we don't think about. We keep thinking about the plastic straw and the plastic bottle and single-use plastics. That's where the whole global focus is, and it's right to be on that. Yeah. It's right. But they're also missing, when you go to a landfill like I went to yesterday, there's a commercial industrial waste. What happens to all the cars and the scooters and the kids' toys and the things that the Pumulon don't want? What happens to that? It goes to landfill. Or it goes, some of it, I'm not saying it all it does, but in many places, I was in Roatan off the coast of Honduras last year on an island that I went to the landfill. They have zero waste management.
Right.
So therefore, the landfill has everything in it. It's like gold to me. It's like I was Raiders of the Lost Ark. I wanted to go in there and start mining that. And I know we can mine landfill.
This is interesting.
So, the whole process of plastic being produced, why are BASF doing this? They realise it. They realise that these big companies are building brand new factories as we speak. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be years before we find an alternative. So in the meantime, what do? We redesign to repurpose plastic. That's the key. If companies all over the world, there's not enough plastic on the planet to build the amount of homes, roads, or the use of oil. We could be free of plastic, not free of plastic, but free of plastic in the environment if we can recycle co-mingled contaminated plastic. Okay. We will never be free of it if we can only recycle single or double polymers.
So do you think that's where NevHouse is different, because it can use that contaminated plastic?
Yes, absolutely.
Quite easily.
Yes.
And no one else is really doing that.
Well, people are using this technology. It's a proven technology for other things. It's not rocket science. What we're talking about here is, manual labour or robotic labour, depends on which society you're in. Yeah. Conveyor belts, moulds, ovens, cooling towers, silos, done.
So in your processes, when you make those panels, there's not a lot of heating going on.
The heating is within a mould.
Okay.
So everything's within that mould. Now what we're doing is we're taking those commingled, slightly contaminated plastics. Now, what I'm saying is, there's not going to, if there's 100% in there, there's not going to be 50% of dirt and food and crap and pesticides. So it becomes a percentage of a percentage. So what I was leading to before was that 70 to 80% test that I said, that's the safe plastics that we use every day.
Yep.
The balance of the 20 or 30%, within that 20 or 30%, there are things that are maybe not be so nice, like PVCs and other things, but they're so heavily reduced that it's a percentage of a percentage in the master mix. The reason we can do it is it doesn't affect our system to actually deal with it. The reason it affects others is that it will ruin the extruders and the intruders and the injection moulders and the roto-moulders and all those sorts of things that are current ways of recycling. That's a problem for the industry. That's why waste management companies can't get rid of it, because the recyclers are saying we can't use that.
Gotcha. And it's encapsulated in the panel. So
what happens is we only need one or two of the polymers to melt. So the lower burn melt rate polymers melt and cover everything within. So if you do a cross-section, you can see unmelted, melted plastics. But there is obviously a proprietary chemistry involved with it, a safe chemistry to actually make that happen. All of that stuff has been done, proven. So what happens is it's like a clamshell mould. It's actually a surfboard blank, because I come from the surfboard industry, and a surfboard blank is inherently two big concrete moulds, now steel, and the moulds are open like a clamshell. They pour a foam inside and they close it up, and it foams up under pressure, and then they take the blank out. But if you look at a surfboard blank, it's got a coating on both surfaces, top and bottom, which is the skin of the blank. So that's got to be removed. So what we have is the same sort of thing, but what we do is we apply the skin. So we apply a 3 to 4 millimetre skin on both surfaces. The surface of the mould can be textured for whatever texture we want, whether a rendered finish, a fake rendered finish, or a fake painted finish, or a fake timber finish, whatever we want. Then we put the plastic inside under small particles, and then with a foaming agent, and it gets blown up inside the mould, goes into a oven, gets baked, comes out the other side finished. I'm not even slightly worried about people doing what we're doing, copying what we're doing, because the demand for the use of low-grade plastics is off the charts, and the demand for housing is off the charts. We're currently speaking with one of the largest, or maybe I shouldn't mention them because it's a discussion, but one of the largest companies in the world in relation to furniture, etc. And because the whole purpose of NevHouse is it is a flat pack delivery of a home, but made out of recycled materials.
Right.
So the impact of the material combined with the architecture is our key.
So you think we're on the verge of in terms of recycling, we're on the verge of a material revolution?
I
Is
agree.
that the way to describe it?
Yeah, I agree. And it's not a new material revolution, because what I'm doing is not a new material. It's not a new process.
No.
But let me give you an example of yesterday. I'm driving around. I've been to a landfill to go with some friends to go and look at it, and it was just unbelievable. And I've been on enough of them to understand that. And every day, every one of us should one day try and go to a landfill in a developing nation and see what people are doing there every day. I was in Mozambique late last year. The president of Mozambique invited me to come down, and I met with him, and then he told me to go out and look at the landfill. Why? Because last year, this landfill is actually amazing. It's this giant mountain that's actually like a crater inside. So they climb down into the crater, and the pickers gather all the plastic, put it in these big bags, climb up the side on the inside, roll those bags down the side, and then the trucks come and pick them up, and they get paid next to nothing, but it's a living. That filled up with water last year, and the side collapsed and buried 30 people in the village. I went to that site, saw it all, and it was heartbreaking. So everybody should go and experience that. But I was driving around Guyana yesterday, and everywhere I looked, under every tree, down every street, in every little creek, down on the beach, were not copious amounts of plastic, but there was plastic everywhere. Now, why is that there? That means that the Pumulon or the pickers have got no reason to pick that up. Now, from our perspective, every one of those little straws in the Denome cups, or is that what they call the little water cups?
Yeah.
You pierce the top.
Yep.
Every one of those cups.
Oh, with the plastic.
Yeah, the little
film
straw
on top, and and it's a pointy straw.
They're global.
Yep.
They're one of the biggest producers of that global single-use plastics.
Yep.
Then there's all the chocolate wrappers and the chip bags and the list goes on and on. The pickers don't want that because it's got no value. I want that. I want the coffee cups that everybody globally is saying stop using coffee cups.
Because they're tricky.
They're tricky because they're a combination of plastic and cardboard.
Yeah.
When you cut open your new computer and it's got plastic and cardboard mixed up together, the recyclers can't use that. So I can use that because some elements are part of the structural integrity of the panel and some elements are simply filler. So when we put all that together, now we can use other fillers, and I'm not going to go into the detail, but there's other fillers we can use if we don't get enough plastic. We can actually put real coconut and bamboo in it to fill the space as long as we get the structural integrity. And the engineering behind it means we need a certain structural integrity for the floor, a certain for the wall, the exterior walls, a certain integrity for the interior walls, and then for the roof. Yeah. So each of them have it's not all wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. It's one panel does everything. The design allows us to do that. The brilliance of Ken McBride's design allows us to use one mould for the floor, walls, and roof of a NevHouse. There's 60 panels in one 50 square metre NevHouse. 90 panels. That's walls, floor, and roof. And when we set up a facility here, because we're getting waste for nothing or next to nothing, and because it's low wages, but we will be paying above award. I'm telling you, we are not going to ever be one of these companies that settles with the local labour rates. We want this to be a great working environment. Locals be paid what they're worth and more to pick up, to collect the plastic. So this is a very important point.
And ensure longevity.
Absolutely.
That's where I feel it comes back to is the ones that seems to me, and this is an observation, that the projects that really work are the ones that are putting back into the community. When people take, They seem to.
We will put back into the community by default. We have to, because we need labour to. We need the lowest labour force, and I say that respectfully, but we need pickers to be on that beach every high tide. I had an epiphany the other night, and it's not a wonderful. It's not like Einstein or anything silly like that. But I'm sitting on the beach and I'm going, hang on a sec. Every afternoon for the next, 2, 3, 5, 10 years, until we solve the problem of waste going into the rivers of the 10 largest rivers in the Asia-Pacific region, which is the only reason there is waste in the Indian Ocean and Pacific. Right? It's not coming off the coast of California or off the coast of Australia. There is a bit, but most of it comes from that.
Keep going. Sorry.
Every high tide, that's going to wash up on the beach. Some places it's a little bit. Some places it's mountains of it. We can ask people to go down and collect that waste, bring it home, shake it out a bit, bale it with a simple hand baler, put it in the corner of their home, take it down to the local bun jar, get it ground and shredded into particles, put in a 1-ton container, and we will pay anywhere from, we'll pay good money.
So you're also
very
saying
good money
you can
for that
create
plastic.
jobs,
Which
is interesting to me. I'm going to share a little story. We have a program at the school. It's called SOAP. It's called Surf Ocean Ambassadors Program. You met some of the students the other week. And,
awesome kids. Awesome kids.
It's born from kids that love to surf with a purpose. And, we do regular beach cleanups, and a few of the guys have started a bamboo straw initiative. And something really interesting has been happening. So the kids have been going to the local warangs on the beach, giving these bamboo straws for free, trying to educate the locals on how to clean them so they don't have to use single-use plastic straws, which is such great learning for the kids. And the most surprising thing to come out of it is that a lot of the warangs don't want them. And the kids are like, and even the teachers are like, well, how come? And they're like, is it because you can't be bothered cleaning the bamboo straws? And the locals have said, no, it's because I'm contracted to my friend to buy his plastic straws. And if I don't buy his plastic straws, he doesn't have a job. And it was such a learning curve for everyone, because teachers included, were like, oh, well, sure they want plastic straws. They want bamboo straws. They don't have to buy plastic straws. They're going to save money, but they don't think like that.
No, and so this is exactly the same thing that I explained before about what Ken said about telling people what they want in architecture or for their homes. It's wonderful to be altruistic, and we all must be altruistic. We all must have a bigger picture, and we all must do our little bit. But you have to understand the commerciality of everything. There's no way I'm going to come to Indonesia or any country on the planet and start barging in with a wonderful solution and then put other people out of jobs. Not people. I might give jobs to people, but in the same token, I might be taking away jobs. Now, we have to fit in. The element about what we're doing is that we are able to take plastic that other people don't want. That's the bottom line. I'm going to elaborate on this a little bit, because that's why I said earlier that being controversial is not something that I want to do. But I'm becoming frustrated. I'll give you a great example.
Frustrated because you're now further down the journey with it.
Further, but not quite through the front door.
Are you still in the trenches?
I'm still in the trenches, absolutely.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah. And
that's beautiful.
Only because we need that first facility. The company was distracted for a couple of years after we delivered in Vanuatu because of, the slow-moving wheels of government. In Vanuatu, we were a preferred supplier of classrooms and schools in Vanuatu after delivering 15 Category 5 rated structures in one of the most remote regions I've ever been. We nailed it. We had the government there. We had 2,000 dancers. We had 10,000 people that had walked across the island. It was the biggest celebration on Tanna Island, Google it, in Vanuatu in 300 to 400 years. They sacrificed 12 pigs for the 12 tribes of Tanna. All of that happened. I almost can't even believe it did happen. It happened. And we were ready with one of the largest construction companies in Australia called Hutchinson's, ready to deliver 1,500 classrooms. But guess what? Nothing happened. A year later, still nothing's happening because of all the innuendo and drama of politics, and I won't use the C word, the longer C word, but it happens in government. And what happened was, I'm going to say it, corruption. Because at the end of the day, a Scottish guy got the contract for 30 of the 1,500 classrooms, and guess what he built? 30 tin sheds. Disgusting tin sheds for classrooms.
Yeah.
Whereas we were providing shelter in the event of the next Category 5 cyclone that would have protected 120 people in each structure, and it still hasn't been done. If a cyclone hits Vanuatu, and it will, and if people die in the places that we were going to build those structures, I'm going to be the first person to be raising that issue and saying to the world, this is ridiculous. Because it's going to happen. I'm sorry, I don't want to sound fatalistic, but it's going to happen. So we were distracted as a company.
Yeah.
And then we went to Luxembourg, and, that's part of the Picture Palace thing. But we needed to focus on delivering the solution of building the facilities in country. Our business model is building the facilities in country everywhere. Provide jobs, take waste out of the local environment, build homes where they're needed, and deliver them where they're needed rapidly. That's our business model. And
it's very obvious that you have a strong sense of community. And every time I've seen you speak, that resonates with me, and I think everyone around you. And I think that's why your message is very compelling, and possibly winning you the Picture Palace. But you grew up in WA, correct? So, do you think that sense of community was instilled in you, in your hometown? What was it like? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Margaret River by any chance? Or
yeah, actually, this might sound a little bit talking myself up a little bit, but watch the movie Breathe by Tim Winton.
Yeah,
well, that story it's not my story, so I'm not claiming anything, but I'm telling you that's my story.
Okay.
So I grew up so I was born in Johannesburg.
Right.
My father lived in Bloemfontein when he grew up. My grandfather worked the railways in Bloemfontein, and I've got a photograph of my grandfather, Charlie, my middle name, who to show the sense of humour in about 1920 or 30, and he's standing in front of the steam train, and he's got his butt towards the camera with all the guys behind him with a split in his pants showing his butt cheek. So that's me, right? That's my grandfather and me, the DNA all the way through. My father married my mum in South Africa. She was from Plymouth in England. Just interestingly, there was always the fear in South Africa of the Zulu uprising. It's well documented. And my father was an English South African. If anybody's read the book Power of One by Bruce Courtney, it's the same story. My father was an English South African going to an Afrikaans school. He feared the Afrikaners more than the blacks. He loved the blacks. I had a black nanny when I was a little baby. So my father, one day walking through the streets of Durban, actually saw 5 black men attack a white man, and it was the first time he'd ever seen that. And it shocked him so much, he went home and he said, "Darling, we're leaving." Now, that might be a bit melodramatic because nothing's happened. The Zulu uprising hasn't happened, but a lot of things have happened. The revolution's
beginning, let's get out of here.
Yeah. So we went to the UK, and my dad worked there for 18 months in the cold, getting up in the morning, coming home at night, no sun. Anyway, my mum finally got sick of it and went, let's get out of here. Let's go to Australia, because Australia offered the 10-pound pom scenario. So we were the classic 10-pound poms on the Oriana boat. Cost £10 to get our family out to Australia, and the first stop was Perth. My dad was a carpenter, loved the ocean, snorkeled, dived, the whole thing. All of that, we arrive in Perth, and then I grow up, and we were refugees for 6 months, and it was a wonderful refugee scenario because everybody wanted us there, not like now. And so we had this sense of community. My mum said this was one of the best times in her life, living in a corrugated iron, half-round refugee camp overlooking the Swan River. So as I grew up, the reason I said about Tim Winton's book and movie was that we used to holiday down at Margaret River all the time.
So is that where you learned to surf?
I learned to surf up in Kalbarri, actually, in the reefs up off Kalbarri. And but then my holidays were all spent down there from Mandurah to Margaret River, and so that movie captures everything, like the dragster bike. the beautiful hippie women living in Margaret River, and we were young teenagers going, "Oh, they're so gorgeous!"
The crazy mates,
making the surfboards, surfing waves that we couldn't really surf. The joy of these kids learning how to surf and their mentors. And I started making surfboards when I was 13. That was me.
Who taught you?
Me.
So you didn't have
I
someone initially say, "This is how you do it."
I started surfing when I was 9. Right? I rode a foamy. So there was not a foamy, a Coolite. So in Tim Winton's book, the boys have got the Coolite. I had one of those. The Coolite, I wanted to put a fin in it, just like they did. I put a fin in it. I used araldite, and it ate a big chunk of the tail of the board out, and it was my Christmas present. And we were housing commission, so I couldn't get a new foamy. It was impossible. So I got a lightweight concrete and set the fin in because the hole that was created. And I've got a photograph of me now at 9 years old, knee paddling this foamy and surfing this little wave in Mandurah in 1968 or something. So that was an amazing story for me. So I grew up in that environment, going down, and then I grew up making surfboards. And how I started was this.
Who was the first shaper that you worked with then when you started to get serious with it?
I didn't. So what happened was...
Then you started Odyssey Surfboards?
Yeah.
Just off your own
initiative? Me and my buddy from school, we've known each other since 14. So Phil Usher and I started making surfboards at school. So what I did, though, at 13, I wrote away to a company called Transmedia Publications in California. And they had a book that Midget Farrelly was saying how to shape a surfboard. So it arrived in the mail. I can remember seeing it. This book arrives, and I open the book, and there's Midget machining a board. So I went down to the local hardware store, bought a planer, bought my tools, got an old blank, stripped down an old board, and hand-shaped my first surfboard in my dad's garage. And then from there, all my school buddies would come over after school, and I started making surfboards. Now, I lived in an hour and a half from the beach. I lived with my... there was only 3 surfers at Bentley Senior High School. And there were rockers, skinheads, bodgies, everything were there. And Phil and I used to run the gauntlet at 3 o'clock in the morning from our home to the Victoria Park railway station to catch the train to go down to Cottesloe and surf all day and come home after dark. I don't know what my mum was thinking, but that's what we used to do. So that book resonated. I was in tears watching it on the plane. I was going, oh my God, I want to talk to Tim Winton saying, were you filming, were you there?
Amazing.
It was incredible. So that's how I started. And then when I left school, then we started Odyssey Surfboard. The day we left school, it was a Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, we walked into the factory, set up Odyssey Surfboards.
Was it you and a mate?
Me and Phil Usher.
Okay. And so how many years did that progress before you broke off into just Nev Surfboards? Well,
that was 75 we started Odyssey Surfboards. We started backyard boards at Hyman Surfboards, then Odyssey Surfboards in my dad's garage, all hand-drawn logos with the repeater-graph pens. The original Odyssey logo is a sunset with lines and seagulls, all very graphic. So I'm pretty proud of it. It was my design. It was great. Like I was a straight A student for art, but I failed everything else because I was too focused on surfing. Phil and I rocked up to our final exams with sand on our feet and wet hair, scraggly hair, and the deputy head said, "You're not coming into your final maths exam. You haven't been studying." And I said, "Well, you better let us in." "No, you're not coming in." So that was back in then 6 of the best.
It's doing you a favour.
Yeah. So then it went to so by 77 I sort of realised that I'm never going to get anywhere in Western Australia because Western Australia was one of the most remote cities on the planet back then. It was separated by 500 miles of dirt between Adelaide and Perth. Yeah. Anyway, so I decided that I need to go to Burleigh. I'd been to Burleigh in 1974 on a trip with my brother, and I just went, I've got to come back here and live here. A right-hand point break. It's my spiritual home for surfing. And that sounds corny, but that's my home.
Immediate connection.
Total. And so I came back in 77. I left everything in Western Australia, left Odyssey with Phil, started again. Started Neville Hyman Surfboards, working with Honesty Surfboards at Miami there. Great guy, and he taught everybody, but he didn't need to teach me, and that's not a boast. I could make a surfboard from start to finish. And he said, "Wow, awesome, do it for me." So I did that, and then I met my girlfriend Bridget there, and she's still my best, one of my very good friends in Sydney. I stay with her all the time, and she surfs, and she was in Bali a few months ago, and with her husband, and so I started Neville Hyman Surfboards, and then that became Nev Hyman Surfboards. And then by 1981, I just called it Nev Surfboards. It was a lot cooler. Like my mum called me Neville. What mother calls their son Neville? Neville nobody, Neville no friends. I'm a ranger, I'm a ginger. Talking about setting me up for failure. Or maybe for strength, like Johnny Cash's song, The Boy Named Sue.
Oh, the same thing, like Shannon's a girl's name.
Yeah,
I actually said it to my mum, like in my early 30s. I'm like, where did Shannon come from?
I know.
Why?
But I was so lucky because Nev is a very powerful word. I'm not saying that. It's got nothing to do with me. It's 3 letters, very balanced. Mm-hmm. It's been used as a clothing company in Japan now for 22 years because and I was told by some big wigs in the industry saying it's a brilliant word. It works as a brand. So that's why I've used NevHouse for Nev Future Shapes. That was my surfboard brand. That was
established.
And then it became, FireWire Nev became FireWire. So that was the extension of that. But now I called. So when Nev became FireWire, I couldn't use Nev for surfboards or anything. I was able to keep using it for my clothing in Japan, which is still going. But so then I had this, I invested in the plastics recycling company. It was called Jet. At the point in time we realised we could make houses, I realised actually that we couldn't make the houses using that technology. So I had to drop that technology and almost walk away from that investment. But I hadn't walked away from the design and the progress that I'd made. So then I'm going, well, we have to call it something else. And I started going, Eco House, Polymer this. Let me give you a word of advice. Never call any brand a generic term because nobody remembers it. Gotcha. I cannot remember half of the companies I've been associated with because they're all eco this and, it's... So, but then if you try to come up with a new brand, it took FireWire about 2 months to come up with a new brand after it was Nev. We checked everything. This is in 2006.
Yep.
Everything was taken. We couldn't find a brand. And then one day Mark Price from FireWire came in and he used Apple at the time. I was still on a PC and he goes, let's call it FireWire. And I went, that's dumb. No, actually, that's pretty good. Actually, it grew on me in about 30 seconds because it's balanced FireWire. The Japanese go, FireWire. It's quite funny. And it's, fire and wire and all that sort of stuff, technology. But then, so we got the brand for that. But then we couldn't get a brand for Nev, for the new technology. So I'm driving down the road one day with my son Jaden and he goes, hey, Dad, you can't use Nev Future Shapes. You can't use Nev anymore. But you can use it for the houses. You've been using your name as your brand all your life. Why don't you call it NevHouse? I went, oh, genius.
Do you feel a sense of fear or, responsibility using your name, putting your name on stuff? Like, I know for me personally, like, if I use my name as a brand, I'd feel really susceptible to criticism and judgment. And
yeah, completely.
How do you deal with that?
We all have ego, right? We all do to a level. But I've been in the industry, the surf industry, long enough. It's just water off a duck's back. Any accolade that comes my way for whatever I've done in my little bubble, it's not that spectacular, really, on a global scale, but just in my little bubble, being a surfboard shaper, being recognised by guys, and over the last 40, 50 years that I've been making boards for guys, I love it. It's awesome. But it doesn't drive me. My ego doesn't drive me. So if that's the case,
what drives you?
I don't care if someone says, wow, awesome, Nev. And then I'm intrigued because I've travelled the world and when my brand was called Nev Future Shapes, I'd be somewhere and someone would say, oh, I'm pleased to meet you. But I didn't realise Nev was a person. They just thought it's an acronym for something.
Yeah,
and
I did too.
Yeah, so when they say it's a person, it's great. So what drives me is the joy of actually creating things that people love and shaping surfboards. Surfing's a very selfish sport.
Yeah, it is.
Like when I paddle out with my kids, I want to take their wave. It's so bizarre. Like I'm paddling, I'm trying to hassle my son or my daughters, and and it's like you're in the water and it's a chess game. You're sitting in the water laughing with your buddies, but you're actually while you're talking to them, you're manoeuvring around them to get the wave.
Like, I want to be sitting where he's sitting.
Exactly.
This is a bit of a loaded question, but how do you feel about the state of surf culture at the moment?
Yeah, actually, I think it's come a long, 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 long way. Because when I first started getting interested in surfing, I asked my mum and dad to give me a surfboard for Christmas. And guess what they bought me? A diving wetsuit. Why don't you go out and go snorkeling with your dad? So they bought me one of those classic ones with the beaver tail.
Yep.
And I went, oh, you've really blown it because I really need a wetsuit. It's cold to go surfing in. So I had my wetsuit. Now, next, my surfboard. So, and the reason for saying that is obviously in the early 70s, the drug culture was rife and the perception of surfing was really negative. I remember when I arrived on the Gold Coast, I was only there for a matter of weeks, and I'd made some boards, and I was sitting on the beach, and one of my, you know, how you stick your board in the sand like that to get out of the sun. And I was sitting next to my board, and a photographer came up and took a photo of me. I didn't even know he'd taken the photo, to be perfectly honest. And it was a silhouette, and they used it on the front page of the Gold Coast Bulletin. He said, surfing dole bludgers living on the coast. Now, nobody could recognise it was me, but I just went, that was me. I've never taken a cent from the government, and that was really offensive. But, okay, that's the perception. Now, I mean, just look at athletes now. I mean, I'm talking about competitive surfing, but athletes are now touring with their families. Mm-hmm. There's wonderful, incredible people touring. Athletes that aren't
promoting really healthy lifestyle.
Precisely. I'm really proud of the surfing industry, the surfing culture, and the fact that surfers can travel and experience things. You know, to be honest, the surfing industry has taken a hit because people seem to be moving away from the in-your-face advertising of surf culture. Like, I don't wear anything branded anymore. I don't like wearing branded stuff. It's like the Uniqlo model. Uniqlo is one of the biggest manufacturers, and I'm not saying whether they're good, bad or ugly as far as their sustainability, but for a brand, you don't see a brand.
Yeah.
So, brand doesn't do anything for me.
Marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how did you start getting your boards recognised by pro surfers? Was it just because,
such a good story.
Someone was ripping one day? Because I know, for example, there's in more recent times, I remember, one example that comes to mind was, Stu Kennedy at Snapper on the Sci-Fi as a wild card and just destroyed it. And I don't know how many Sci-Fi
Tomo
boards.
was God.
Tomo,
God.
a lot of people are who's this Tomo, around the world. And then, myself included, my wife went and actually bought me a Sci-Fi for my 40th birthday. Yeah. Because I was like, I've got to get one of those Sci-Fis. So,
well, how
that's
it happened
a modern
was
day,
this.
that's my personal example. But can you give me one?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience, actually. And it actually goes back in time because I was 14 down at Margaret River when Ian Cairns, maybe younger, 13, when Ian Cairns won the state titles. Yep. Now, he was 4 or 5 years older than me, so I looked at him and went, he was God. He was like Kelly Slater is to the kids today, or, as multiple generations of people, kids today
to
with
me
Kelly.
Too, and we're both bald.
Yeah,
so keep going.
So I was down there and I was in the area and he walked past me and he made eye contact and he said, "G'day, mate." And I went, "Oh, hi." And then I went home, walked straight into home and I said, "Mum, Ian Cairns said g'day, mate," to me. I couldn't believe it. I was amazed. So then, within 3 years, I was making surfboards in a house in Perth, not a factory, in a house along Canning Highway, and I got a knock at the door. I opened the door. There's Ian Cairns at my door. Like, what? I almost couldn't speak. And he said, "Hey, Nev, I hear you're making surfboards and we're doing a trade show in Perth at the Perth Concert Hall. I'm wondering whether you'd like to display your boards." Now, it was a commercial thing for Ian that he wanted people to fill his booths because he was doing the first trade show in Perth for surfing. So I did. So then Ian was now kind of my friend. So that was 1976. By 1981, I was making boards for all the pro surfers. Now, how did that happen? I arrived on the Gold Coast in 77 and started making boards for all the hot young surfers on the North End board riders area. So the guys down the southern end of the coast, down at D-Bar, where all the Michael Petersons and Bruce Lees and Murray Burtons of this world, the Shapers, and the really cool guys were down that end of the coast. And I was surfing in the northern end of the coast with Joe Ingle and all the young pros there, Munga as a young boy, and Munga Barry. And all the other legends at the North End board riders. So I started making them boards, and I started upsetting some apple carts, not intentionally. Some other shapers were getting annoyed with me because these guys were starting to ask me for me to shape them boards.
So had you been sponsoring Just unknown locals?
Not sponsoring, just guys saying, Nev, the North End Board Riders Club, I'd hang out with them and they say, Nev, shape me boards.
But why? Why were they coming to you?
Because they were different. So I rocked up the first day I arrived on the Gold Coast. I'm in my Jeep. I literally have driven from Sydney after dropping off my friends, drive into Woodruff Avenue at Main Beach, get out my car. Bridget's there, my girlfriend. I didn't know she was going to be my girlfriend. Day one, all the guys from North End Board Riders were there. And my boards are on the roof. I pull them down. They're just going, oh wow, this is cool. Wow, look at this little 20 with this and the pin lines and the spray and the colours and everything. Can you make me a board? And I didn't realise these guys were the best surfers on the Gold Coast, with the exception of the guys down the southern end. And so got a little bit of a following. Started making boards in Bridget's horse shed at the back. So it was the classic Morning of the Earth thing. I've got a photograph of me with the horse sticking his head through the shed and the curly crazy hair with the straw in my mouth and my girlfriend and making boards in a horse shed. It was awesome. And then I got a job with Laurie Honnessy because I wanted to meet Richard Harvey and Bob McTavish. So as I was driving up the coast, before I got to the Gold Coast, I'm in Lennox Head and I'm going, I've got to meet Bob McTavish. And so I pulled into the garage and said, where does Bob McTavish live? He said, oh, just down the road, around the corner on his farm. So I drove around the corner, pulled into the driveway, and there's Bob McTavish standing outside wet rubbing a surfboard, like straight out of Morning of the Earth. And I pulled up and said, oh, get out my car. Oh, hi, are you Bob? Yeah, my name's Nev from Western Australia, and I make boards too. And he was so lovely. He was amazing. He was actually making a surfboard. He was wet rubbing the bottom of a board that he had designed around the bottom of a dolphin. Right. It was a full hull with little fins coming out on angles, just like a dolphin. It never worked, but we laugh about it now. That's how I saw him.
I just had a mental image of, I'll never forget the first time I seen, was it called the baked potato?
Yeah.
I remember picking that thing up and it had like it was wide, like, I don't know, like 23 inches wide or something, and no rocker. But then I turned it over and it's got like really deep concaves in the tail, like double concave. And like, is he someone that inspired you to really think outside of the square?
The 70s was the hotbed of trying something completely different.
It seems like you maintained that progressive mindset.
Yeah, maybe more so. Okay, so we'll get to that as the journey continues. But I was the kid from Western Australia, 18 or 19 or something, that already had a surfboard company and left everything to come to Queensland. It amazes me now, I think back, what people back then achieved. Bob McTavish, at 16, stowed away on a boat to get to Hawaii at 16 to go surfing and surf Sunset in Waimea Bay. It's what kids did back then, what I did back then, what others did back then. It blows my mind now, looking back. So anyway, I'm driving. I meet Bob. It was awesome. He said, Nev, look, awesome. Go and meet with Richard Harvey. So I go to Miami. I rock into Richard's factory. There's Dick Van Stralen and Richard Harvey. Gods, as far as I was concerned. And they said, look, Nev, awesome what you're doing. Don't have a job for you, but go and see Laurie Honnessy. He gave me a job making his boards for a while. So then, that's how that journey. But what happened from there was, lo and behold, guess what? There was a contest called the Stubbies at Burleigh Heads. 77. I arrived in 77.
Heard about it.
And every year I would start making boards and I'd go down to the contest, hang out, make sure, I know I am a marketer. I know what to do to get to people. So I make these boards, bring them down, hang out at the contest, sit on the scaffold, put the board on the grass and see what happens. So this is after making boards for all the other guys locally. But a little bit of a segue into the culture back then. I was really not looked upon as anybody that was with the right people from 77 through to 1980. So like even I got down to D-Bar and I'd go for a surf and I'd come in and my car's windscreen would be waxed.
So you're still a blow-in from
I was a blow-in from Western Australia. So the people that I had sort of kind of inadvertently upset, their egos maybe a little bit. And those guys are now my good buddies. So they will all laugh if they ever hear this.
Feel like, was that a blow to your
confidence? No, it was water off a duck's back. I knew that I was a blow-in. I wasn't going, I'm in here, I'm the best shaper on the planet, I'm going to smash you out of the ballpark. I was just making boards.
Is that how you felt?
Totally.
You felt like your designs were better than everyone else's?
No, not at all. I'm really self-effacing. I'm a ginger. I'll tell you a little story later about my journey through gingerhood. So let's talk about that in a minute. So there I was, and I was getting this criticism, and I'm like, no worries. But actually, I'm going to not worry about this. I'm going to jump over you. That's what I was sort of thinking. I'm going to get my act together and travel. So I went to Hawaii in 78, had an incredible time, shaped boards for some local guys there, met a few people. And then because I met a few people, then they'd meet me, like all the Mark Liddell, Bertleman, Dane Kealoha, all the legends, but I was meeting them for the first time, Bernie Baker and, just all of the legends. I can't think of, but I was in 78, I met a lot of them. I went with a good buddy of mine, John Nielsen, with our girlfriends, and we had a great time. But John was one of the key guys for the Stubbies event. And so through John, through connections, I started meeting all these guys in Hawaii. So I came home, did some more travel, went to all around the US and shaped surfboards in California, in Puerto Rico, and just had a great time, 78, 79, did a lot of traveling. Went to Japan, did blah, 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 blah. So I didn't get stuck in the local rut. I just kind of jumped and started and had a great time doing it. It was awesome. So then I'm back at the contest in 1980, I meet Ketut Menda because I come to Bali. One of the legends of Bali. That was your first visit
to Indonesia?
Yeah.
To surf?
To surf, yeah. So we surf Ulus when it was only just a big warong. I'm not claiming anything that I saw anything, because others have been before me. But I was there for the On Bali Pro and all that sort of stuff. So Ketut's he's my brother from another mother, and that's a serious. I love him to bits. And he's one of the 5 legends of that era of Balinese surfing. Mare Suwatra there I met yesterday, and all the other guys. So then I made Ketut boards, and they were the 80s boards. They were bright sprays, and Ketut was just such an amazing surfer. So he came to the Gold Coast, first Indonesian professional surfer to come to the Stubbies event. So I made him some boards when he arrived, and I took them down to the event, and I leant the board up against the pine tree. I sat on the scaffold and just watched people going past, and guys walking past. And then I saw a couple of pros pick up the boards, and they're holding them, checking it out, and making some positive things, and they put it down again, didn't say anything. And then Bertleman. So I hadn't met Bertleman at this time. He comes along and he picks up the board and he's checking it out, and I'm going, oh my God, Larry Bertleman's touching one of my surfboards. He puts it down, walks away. I didn't have the courage to go and say, oh, it's my board, and things like that. So then I got up and walked over to the board, and I was standing next to it, and about half an hour later, I get this tap on my shoulder. I turn around, it's Shaun Tomson. No way. I'm just going, are you kidding me? Oh, hey, and he goes, hey, bro, hey, this is a really nice board. I can't do a South African accent. I was born in South Africa. I can't do a South African accent. Oh my God. Anyway, and he goes, lekker, and he goes, look, man, I'd really like you to shape me some boards. And I went, oh yeah, sure, man. In a bit of paper, I wrote down the dimensions and stuff, and I picked up his board that he was surfing that Spider Murphy had shaped, and I said, thanks, man. I'll see you later. I'll give me a call at the end of the week. So I really casually stroll back to my combi, get inside my combi, wind up the windows. Oh my God! It was one of the best moments of my life. And so I made Shaun some boards.
Do you feel like it was just a breakthrough moment?
An awesome moment. Thanks to Menda, thanks to Shaun, thanks. And then the crazy thing is, and then Kanga comes and orders a board, and he ordered a board for Bells.
Gotcha. And then the
wheels started turning, and then the next year was 82, and then all the Hawaiians rocked into town. Vince Klein, Mark Liddell, Kealoha, Bertleman, again, all of them, and then all the South Africans, and all of a sudden I'm getting all these boards. These orders for boards, but the funny thing is the local guys were going, oh yeah, Nev's making all boards for these pros. What's going on with that? He's making boards and he must have heaps of money because he's giving the boards away to all these guys.
Rich Burleigh.
I was not. They were all paying for the boards. I worked my ass off to get those boards made, and then one of the best things that ever happened is after I made the boards for Shaun, he took them down to Bells, he surfed. I got all these great photos of him surfing the boards. I gave them to him in the Kira car park, right? And someone saw me giving him the boards. And then they made all those negative comments. I saw Nev in the car park giving away boards to people. And then I got this letter back from Shaun. I've still got it framed. It's the only time I've ever received a true letter from a pro surfer saying, Nev, I really appreciate the effort that you went into making those boards. This one was great. This one wasn't so good. I took them to Bells, blah, blah, blah. And thank you so much. Let's catch up next time. And it was just like Thank you so much.
Like over the years, who were some surfers that really helped you improve your craft over the years? Like, who did you gel with? Who gave you the feedback that helped you progress?
Well, when I did that board for Ian, he surfed 18-foot bells, on that board. And that was a big yellow board that he surfs. The big swell.
The big swell in the 80.
That Simon
83?
won. So, 81. This was when Simon introduced his thruster. Now, Ian was riding a form of thruster. That was a 3-fin board at 18-foot bells, but Simon took it one step, 3 individually sized, same size fins, wider tail. That was the true thruster. So there was a shift going on with design to get a twin fin to work better than, with a bit more drive. Yeah. So we were stabilising twin fins, basically. And Ian's had a much narrower tail, and therefore we put 3 fins on it, but it was a bigger single fin, a smaller single fin and two side fins to give stability. So considering all of that, there became a fair bit of attention on my boards. There was a lot, and then Simon and I got some of Simon's boards through Dougal Walker, who arrived back on the Gold Coast, through John Nielsen, bringing back Simon's boards. I pulled them apart like every other shaper who had the opportunity to, and then we started the process of refining the thruster. Simon was refining it, and all of the other shapers around the world who were completely and utterly blown away with what Simon pulled together. So then, I started shaping them, and I started putting on team riders like Katut, like Merrick Davis. Now, Merrick Davis, a lot of people may not have heard of Merrick. He was a guy from Queenscliff, and he won the Australian junior surfing titles, and he was on tour in the early 80s. But technically, he was one of the best surfers I've ever seen.
Why?
Because he had the classic surfer's build. He had the build of really big shoulders, narrow waist, short legs, super powerful, low centre of gravity. I've watched that guy take off on his backhand, go straight out into the flat, almost like, when are you going to stop going to the beach, Mez? When are you going to do your bottom turn and go back and hit the lip? He'd do that, and the boards we designed were like Simon's thrusters, but we pulled the tail in a little bit more, altered the fin positioning a little bit more. They were boxier rails, flat deck.
Yep.
So this is before boards had rolled decks and tweaked nose. They still had the beak nose and all that sort of thing. Flatter rockers. So Merrick was able to get and put his back foot right on that tail, and then just go straight off, and then he would go straight back up his trail. Right. And they'd do the most crazy backhand re-entries, and guys are doing that better now in the equipment they're doing now, but he was doing it with power. So Merrick was one of the first guys that I was working with to help me with my design.
Is that because, do you feel like, because those guys like Couture would have been surfing much better waves than the average Australian surfer? If they're in Indonesia,
a good point.
Do you think that could have been a factor?
Well, with Couture, he was the fastest surfer I'd ever seen. Okay. I couldn't believe how quick that guy went. And when I put him on my boards, he loved them, and I could see that we were onto something. And it was all about, because he was a little guy, he was only like 65 Ks, I was able to reduce the volume of the board, make it narrower tail, and start that process of refining Simon's brilliant thruster. Not saying that I was the only guy doing that.
Yeah.
And then Merrick was a little bit more like Simon, because he had that, not as big as Simon, but he still had that really powerful stance.
Gotcha.
So it was a combination of the lightweight surfer and the powerful guy, and I was bringing those two together. So,
and were they good communicators?
Yeah, Couture wasn't, but I could see it, what I needed to do.
You just had to watch him.
The surfer-shaper relationship is not just about this. It's an innate relationship, and if a shaper gets even just one brilliant surfer over their career, like Al Merrick had 2 or 3, Al Merrick, Tom Curran, Al Merrick, Kelly Slater, and Al Merrick, and a whole bunch of other guys. I had one. I had a lot of great guys riding my boards over the years. Nev Future Shapes was one of the top 5 brands, I would say, in the world, between 1990 and 98. And I'm very proud of that. And I had an incredible team. By 98, I had one of the best teams on the planet. But Munga was my guy. So in about 85, Munga started. He was 16, surfing Burleigh. He started riding my boards, and he communicated really well. He's a really smart young guy. So we became that relationship, the surfer-shaper relationship.
Gotcha.
And then Munga became really well known because of his relationship with Billabong, and he became one of the first free surfers that travelled the world. And Jack McCoy made Bunyip Dreaming, the epic video, the Green Iguana, all of those. And
the
people,
Billabong movies.
Yeah, and the next stage of movies were like the Momentum, black and white with Kelly. That was more about technical surfing.
Yeah.
That everybody went, oh my God, Kelly's the best surfer on the planet. But Munga set the stage for the travelling surfer. Like, I can do this, So with that in mind, my relationship with Munga was really good, and it lasted. So he was like 10 years in the top 10. He could have won a world title, like a lot of guys could have done. He won J Bay in '98, and I think another years before that. But he retired in '99 at 28, which was ridiculous. Like, Kelly's 47, and Munga could have still been doing that.
Do you feel like the Zen art of hand shaping is being lost, or is lost completely? I'm sorry to ask
this
that.
question. I love this question.
Well, because you were kind of on the forefront of computer-generated shaping. Maybe give us some. What do you think on that? Like the Zen art of hand shaping, because sorry to keep talking, but I follow you on Instagram, and I noticed you did a live feed in the shaping bay. And you were shaping some like channel bottom shooter. I just watched. My kid was crying at the time. I was like, "What's he doing?" And it looked like some sort of
So the story behind that is that is it
being lost? Is what I'm trying.
It hasn't been lost, and I could have been responsible and feel a responsibility for its potential demise. But let me explain this. When I was after that whole making boards for the Hawaiians, I started getting a lot of demand for my boards. I was a prolific shaper. Prolific meaning I could shape at that period of time 5 or 6 or 8 boards a day, hand shaped, full, no help whatsoever. So as time went by, I realised straight after that event, some Japanese surfers asked me to shape them some surfboards, and I went, oh look, I don't have time. I'm making boards for all these really good pros, and these guys, I don't know, and they were in their stubbies. So I made some boards for Takao Kuga and Shuji Kasiya, and I was told by Kazunori Kaneko, who was the surfer pole winner in Japan at the time. So these 3 guys were the cream of the crop, and he said, Nev, if you make boards for these guys and they make the main event, you very famous in Japan. That was his words to me. Takao made the main event, and Shuji almost did, and they blew everybody away. So within a matter of months, I was in Japan shaping. So from 83 to 87, I was hand shaping surfboards in Japan, to the point where in 87, I was shaping 15. My record was 16 boards in a day. My fingertips would bleed. I'd work from 6:30 in the morning to 10 at night, and I made a lot of money, and they enabled me to have a really good lifestyle ahead of that, So it was just a great moment for me.
But not sustainable?
Not sustainable at all, because I was, it was like I was an athlete. And I'm not exaggerating. I had to go to work. By 87, I'd go and I'd shape 5 boards in the morning. And then I'd go, okay, I've done 5. And then I'd start the next 5. And I'd get depressed, feeling I can't do this. I've got to shape another 10 boards. And then I'd get into the 7th or 8th board, and I'm starting to pick up a bit of confidence. And then I'd get to 10. And then I'd go, oh, I've got 5 more to go. And then my second wind would come in, and then I'd just power through the last 5, and I'd go, yeah, I've done it. And then I'd go, oh, no, I've got to do 2 weeks of this, 3 weeks of this. I shaped 300 boards in 5 weeks, with a week off in the middle.
No way. Because I was going to say, I thought the quality would deteriorate.
Quality gets better.
Is it because, the muscle memory there, the feel?
Yeah, and it's all about, the reason I said that about being an athlete is that an athlete has to be in complete control of every aspect of what he's doing. His training and his surfing and his basket, whatever he's doing, he's thinking through the turn, the airs that these guys are doing. I can't do that. But when I'm shaping a surfboard, I know where my pencil is, I know where my planer is, and I know that I'm going clockwise around the board. If I do anything outside of that, I will lose 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes. If someone knocks on the door and says, oh, Mr. Nev, you want help? No. Close the door. I don't need to be interrupted because you just cost me 3 minutes. And 3 minutes over 15 boards is a lot of time.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I learnt a lot from that experience, but what I also learnt was that I can't keep up with demand, and every other surfboard manufacturer on the planet at the time were licensing their brand around the world. So the Town & Countries and Local Motions and Almerics and everybody and could do what they had to do. So they had local shapers all around the world doing their boards. Now, I'm telling you, it's impossible to train a local shaper on the other side of the planet and have them make your boards. So then they don't become your boards. And so that's an issue. So by late 80s, I'm thinking, I can't do this. So then Bob McTavish, I went to Sydney and Force 9 had a thing called a pantograph. And they just set it up. And a pantograph is like a key cutting thing. So you've got a finished surfboard, fiberglassed and everything, with a sensor on it, or just a knob, and then it runs across to another thing with an angle grinder on the other side with a surfboard blank. And back and forth you move this trolley thing, and it cuts a board about 75% of a finished board. I ordered 100 blanks. I was the first guy to order in volume of any form of copying a surfboard. And then those blanks were phenolic blanks from Surf Blanks, and they all collapsed on me, and it was a nightmare. But I managed to finish these boards and take them to California to a trade show, and I put them on the ground at the trade show with my finished boards. And then all these shapers were coming in, like Al and Rusty, and they're going, oh my God, these are copies of a board? And they said, wow, awesome. And then
basically anyone could have shaped with that
yeah,
piece, with that
you just
tool.
copy a board. As long as you made a series of boards.
And it was a process of moving your arms back and forth over it. And
yeah, and the machine we had, I came back to the Gold Coast, met with Ted Wilkins and Bob McTavish, and asked them to build me a machine because they had one. And so I had one delivered to my factory, I had it working, and I called it Lucy, short for Lucifer, because it just kept ruining our days because it wasn't accurate enough. But it was still doing it was enabling me at the time to do 100 boards a week. I grew my business from 88 to doing 10 or 12 boards a week to doing 100, 120 boards a week. So I was the first guy to coin the phrase ghost shaping, because I had my two guys, Nick Maz and Bob Mayle, who were both very good shapers, who were finishing the last 25%, whilst I then started working on the business.
It's still your shape.
Still my shape. And then I would finish all the team boards and all the special orders and things like that, and all the production boards that were finished but it was just the last 25%. It was easy showing those guys how to do that. And then we started exporting boards. From 87 onwards, I was exporting from Australia back to Japan. I stopped shaping in Japan and exported to Japan.
So you kind of realised that if you don't come up with a system, you're not going to survive as a surfboard company.
If you don't come up with a system to take low-grade recycled plastic out of the environment, you don't have the solution for the big picture.
So you were
That's
starting
exactly
to
what I did
develop
back
systems thinking then because of surfboard shaping. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So then what happened was others jumped ahead of me. Like Al Merrick went to Channon. This guy Tony Channon, who had a machine that was a CNC machine that was a computer-aided machine that was cutting rotor blades for helicopters or something. And they turned that into a computer shaping machine, but the complexity of the program meant that no surfboard shaper could actually design a surfboard. There's a guy, Luciano, in Brazil, did the same thing, and he had DAT, which was a CAD-type program, like AutoCAD. There's no way I was going to learn AutoCAD. So what happened was in 92, I got a guy called... A guy came to me to work for me as a manager, Michael Langenbach, and he. And then I said no job for a manager, but I told him about Lucy out the back, and he turned out to be an engineer, and so he went out the back and said, "I think I can help you with the problems you have with your machine." He solved the problems. I started working with him. We then took that further and further, rebuilt it with German engineering, with his skill. Then we brought in the programmer from France, Emmanuel Vinmelin, from Shape 3D. Now, it was still designed as a sailboard program, so he came out and I started working with him, with Mickey Langenbach, and to turn that program into a program that surfboard shapers, dumbasses like me, could look at the program and go, I can do that. So when you design a surfboard and when you measure a surfboard, like all of the shapers prior to this, guys like Glenn Manami and Al Merrick and everybody and Rusty, who were really particular about numbers, and so was I. We'd have all these spreadsheets with all the different lengths, widths and thicknesses and everything of the surfboard. And there's a method in measuring surfboards. It's from the tail to the nose is 6 foot. You measure the rocker from the nose and from the tail, but with CAD it's all from 0 to X. So it wasn't going to work. There was so much more complexity about all of that. So I worked with Emmanuel and the guys and said, this is what we need. So, and then that program evolved into Aku Shaper. So this brilliant guy came to my factory one day, Jimmy Freeze, his father, Ralph Freeze from Honolulu, the University of Hawaii. He's renowned for the lattice theory in math. I don't even know what that is, but it's pretty cool. And so he then worked on the program. So now, but whilst that was happening, I was being slaughtered by the media.
Why?
Indirectly.
Like
Full-page ads in Tracks
like
magazine
you're a sellout?
saying, yeah, I'm a sellout to machines. Full-page ads going, where's the soul of shaping? To your point about hand shaping, where's the soul of machines are going to be terrible for the industry. Machines are going to ruin creativity. And it never said Nev, and because there were other people doing it too. But what happened was, at that point, there was an article in Surfing Life magazine, and it was Murray Burton and me. I was saying machines or computerized or using technology is going to benefit surfboard production and surfboard shaping and design. Murray was saying no, it's going to damage the whole scenario. Now Murray and I are best mates, and now he drives around in a van with the data sheets of Aku Shaper on the side of his van, and he uses Aku Shaper and machines. He's mid to late 60s, and he's the happiest guy on the planet because he just designs his boards on the computer and they're done. I walk into shops now and I see people like JS and DH and all my friends, all the guys in the industry, and they're using what I helped to develop and what I commercialised. And this is not my ego talking, this is just what happened. And now every surfboard shaper on the planet who's got any name for themselves is using these systems to help them with their production and to help them with design. Tomo's the best example. Tomo is a brilliant shaper. He's a brilliant hand shaper. His curves are almost second to none. The way he puts his curves together are gorgeous. But he does it by hand, and he also does it with the system.
Sounds to me like it was born out of sheer necessity to survive.
Anxiety is the mother of invention. Not what's the truth?
No,
I call it anxiety.
Well,
necessity is the mother of invention. I call it anxiety because when you're in a situation when you can't control a business owner, and you can't solve the problem, you have to step it up.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're doing with NevHouse.
And you seem very much like a realist, which is obvious in the work you're doing today. So you were like, well, okay, I can't sit in a bay in Japan and pump out 15 boards a day. No. I'm going to pass out.
And my ego wanted me to be bigger. I wanted to make boards for the world's best surfers.
So you had to put your ego on the shelf a little bit, you know. It's interesting, but now it's so commonplace. Like,
very few people know the story. The history. I was with John Pizell, the great shaper, John Pizell.
How does he feel about it?
And he goes, he said to me about 2 years ago, he said, hey, Nev, what machine do you use? And I went, John, do you know that I actually had something to do with APS 3000 and Aku Shaper, and if I was going to use a machine, that's what I'd be using? Yeah. He said, no, I didn't know that at all. And it hurt me. It really hurt me because the industry didn't recognise that there should be talk about that, and that's just my ego talk. So forget it. So it's no big deal.
In your professional opinion, are you completely comfortable with the quality being produced now by machines?
It's better than hand shaping. It's the design, the ability to be able to design with CAD is infinitely better than hand shaping.
Here's my next question. So let's say you come up with a design in Burleigh, and then you want it finished and glassed in Japan. How reliable is that?
Right now, it's almost...
Japan's an example, but let's say anywhere
so that's what we have.
France,
and I'm glad you touched on that.
Indonesia.
Yeah. My original business plan, it was called Mobius. So in 2004 or 5, it was called Mobius. And what that was setting up computer shaping machines all over the world. So I was running around the world selling APS 3000. Sold one to Gordon Merchant from Billabong, California, the UK. Ended up having a fallout with Mickey Langenbach. That's another story. But as I'm selling, and the reason for that was that I was pushing ahead with this business model. I was moving too fast for Mickey, and he wanted to just do the machines. And then I also had this business plan with Nev Surfboards globally. And the plan was this: have these machines all over the world. I would email the file to those machines. They would be machined locally, finished locally, and made. And they would be my boards. So at that point in time, it would have been about, I would say, 85% finished. That last 15% was doable. For me to feel comfortable, they'd be my boards. Now, you can machine those boards like 95%. It is so close, it's
accurate.
ridiculous. Yeah. So
What about the glassing?
Well, glasses are globally now do exactly the same thing. So whether they're in Vietnam or China or in California or in Australia or whatever, the quality of glassing globally, it's plateaued.
Do you set some regulations that they must adhere
it had to be certain weight,
if they're going to have your brand?
We had to do all that. But the point about this globalization of the business model that I helped to launch is that computer shaping, or it's CAD-CAM, computer-aided design, computer-aided machining. That process has no doubt improved design in surfboards. And if you want to argue with me that, go ahead. I'm happy to have the argument.
And helped the industry
And
stay
help the
afloat?
industry, absolutely. The negative of it is that, yes, it's helped industry globally to make surfboards, like in Vietnam, China, etc. Right now, the boards coming out of those destinations are pretty good, and all the major labels are having their boards made there now. So it's just a shift that every other industry on the planet has had to deal with. But there's an interesting shift coming back, because globally, the next industrial revolution, if you want to call it that, is decentralization. The first part of globalization was industry, manufacture on scale, export around the world. Japan started that, then it was China.
So what are you getting at?
US.
It's going full circle.
It's coming back because of the net, because of CAD-CAM, because of the ability to be able to 3D print, because of all these things. The future will be manufacturing in country. The smaller the manufacturing plants in country, the more jobs, the less impact it has for that company going broke, because it's decentralized. So that's my view. That's not just my view. That is a global recognised shift. So that fits very well with NevHouse, because that's exactly what we're doing. But it also fits well with the surfboard industry. So if I've got a business, if I was going to go, and I'm not going to, if I was going to go back into the surfboard industry, I would set up my little program as I planned it, the Mobius program, and I would link with every one of these little surfboard factories around the world. And there are glass shops all over the world that do incredible jobs. So I'm even getting to the point where I'm going to, I want to be a mentor, a teacher of hand-shaping surfboards. That's where I'm going with this. So I want to bring the craft back, not bring it back, but keep it here. Because I know for a fact let's just not talk about groovy guys in sheds at Kira. There's girls in Norway that would like to shape a surfboard because it's a craft. And I want to teach people that craft. But if you're living in Norway, and I'm just throwing that out there because there is surf in Norway, and there's also glass shops around. They might be 3 hours away, or they might be a flight away. What I'm hoping to do through is to teach people the craft of shaping, either online or in person, so that they can actually order a blank. It can arrive at their doorstep. They can build their shaping room to the specifications that I'll give them. We will send them the tools they will need to make the board, because there's no point in saying, you could go and find some stuff and try and shape a board. We'll give them everything they need, and whether they're trying to do it commercially or whether they want it to do it for a craft, they can shape a board. And then what do you do when the board's shaped? Oh, by the way, we'll show you how to paint the board. These are the paints you use. This is how you mask off a board. This is how you hold the tape. All these little tricks, I can show people how to do that, because I used to do all that.
You spent your life
doing
refining, yeah.
So then they've got a shaped sprayed blank. What do they do with that? Oh, they put it inside this great technology from a company called Board Bubbles, or Bubble Board. Oh, God, sorry, guys.
Hayden Shapes originally started?
Sort of. Well, Hayden started the little program. Yeah, but
we won't go there.
Yeah, but so imagine a box where the blank can't be damaged. So that person who's done this course sends the blank to the glass shop. Now that glass shop might be, again, 3 hours away or 3 days away, whatever. It arrives, gets laminated, put back in the same box and shipped back to them, or shipped to a customer. That's why people can start little cottage. The surfboard industry has always been a cottage industry. There's always been like 10, 20, 50 of the big guys, and then there's been thousands of guys making 3 to 5 boards a week all over the world. It's always been like that.
So I just find it really interesting that you yourself talking about that concept, which may be something you do later on to, when you want to slow things down, maybe, because at the moment it doesn't feel like you're slowing things down at all. I just find it really inspiring that you want to pass on that knowledge. I mean, otherwise you don't want to take it to the grave with you.
No, it's. I'm glad you said that too, because the how this evolved was that my kids. I've got 3 kids. My daughter Renee, she's 31. Mm-hmm. She was the Australian. She was the Gold Coast, Queensland, and Australian junior champion at 14. Incredible surfer. Used to compete against Stephanie Gilmore all the time up until that age, until Stephanie evolved and left the world behind, including my... So then Tara, my other daughter, she surfed. She was in the state titles and everything. So, and then my son Jaden, who's the ultimate hipster, muso, curly long hair, drop wallet, fish surfer. So I've got my 3 kids who surf, and Jaden's girlfriend Lyra, who is just salt of the earth, gorgeous, just the great match for Jaden. And they said, "Dad, we've never seen you shape a board." And I went, "Good, because I'm not going to shape a board. I'm not interested. Sorry." And they said, No. Okay, so I went down to this hot, sweaty little surfboard factory down at Kira on a hot day in February and shaped 5 boards. And used my old logos, finished them, used my old logos, and I said to the kids, "That's it. That's all I'm doing. Not doing it again." I shaped a step up for me for Burleigh, a 6'6", and I had my old fish logo on the board. So I'm walking down the point at Burleigh, and guys are going, "Oh my God, Nev, you want to shape me a board?" No, I'm not doing it. Forget it. I'm not. FireWire was my swan song. I'm happy. Kelly's taken a FireWire. I'm the happiest guy on the planet now. I'm focusing on NevHouse. Not interested. I can go to FireWire and just go and pick up a board. Mm-hmm. I don't even care if it's my shape. I was riding Tomo's and Dan Mann's boards and everything for the last 2 or 3 years. I wasn't even riding my own boards. I'm not interested. So I shaped these boards, and then for about 6 months, guys were saying, "Shape me a board." Then one day early in last year, Jaden says to me, "Dad, guys will pay good money for your boards. Let's do 80s remakes," because they all were coming up to you and going, hey, Nev, I had one of your boards in 82, and I'm looking at this guy going, and he's going, and I was a grommet, and I'm looking at the guy going, "Hang on a sec, you're much older than me, surely." So I'm looking at these crusty old men saying that they're younger than me, which really hurt.
It's a revival.
Yeah. So I started doing late last year 80s remakes of Munga's boards, of Sonny's boards, and sadly with Sonny at the moment, as we probably all know, and we're just all hoping and praying that he's going to be okay. Yep. But this great remaking of the 80s and bright fluoro sprays and everything, and I've had guys pay me good money for the boards, and so I set up a shaping room at my house, and so I didn't want to go back into a surfboard factory, although I'm using Sam Parsons to glass my boards. And guys like Gary Josky used to actually polish my boards, and he used to run my surfboard factories in the 90s. Now they're still doing my boards. Al Kolk used to spray my boards in the 80s.
So it's a full revival.
It's a revival. The same guys are doing the boards, and
that's amazing.
And they're coming up unreal with set fins, polished fluoro sprays, and which is one of the boards that I brought with me that Kaio Abelli surfed yesterday, and it's a Munga weapon. That's what we called Munga's boards back then. And Munga won J Bay in '98, and before that, and so I've got a photograph yesterday or the day before yesterday of Kaio doing this insane off the lip sort of drift, and Munga was doing the same turn at J Bay on the same board, because I've got the board here with me now, the original and the copy.
What's the time difference?
30 years difference.
No.
So Kaio comes up to me yesterday and goes, Nev, look at this. And he goes, "Look at it's Munga 30 years ago, same turn."
Did Kaio make the Instagram?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the 2 photos.
Yeah, check it out. Go to Kaio Belly's Instagram, and you can see the photos of it. It's awesome. So, so this whole making the boards using technology and then going back to my craft. So what happened was I started shaping these boards when I had my shaping room, when I built my own room, and it's exactly how I wanted it. I'm in that room. All of a sudden, I've got my Zen moment. I'm in there, and I hadn't forgotten a thing, and then I thought, I'm going to live stream this. So I'm live streaming me shaping. So normally it takes.
Was recently.
Yeah. So normally it takes me about an hour to hand shape a board. But now it's taking me an hour and a half because I'm talking to guys. So, which is awesome. So I'm in there and guys are logging in and you can see all their comments, and every now and again some shaper from, like Timmy Patterson logs in, or someone from Hawaii logs in, and I'm going, hey guys, awesome.
I found it intriguing. I'm never in a shaping bay as your average Joe Blow. And just to watch the way you were holding the hand plane and those refined movements, it was intriguing.
Well,
and these days, I guess modern day surfers, and especially these kids who've never had a hand-shaped board, and probably maybe never will, who knows, like, it's good for them to go back to the roots a little bit and see, like, this is how it started. Guitars, making a guitar. It's not just a production guitar. You see those guys making handmade guitars, and every element means something. And when you're watching the craftsman who's actually making the guitar, he's done it for 30, 40, 50 years, and every hand movement, every little tweak. And I realised that I'm a very systematic shaper. So when I was talking about the process of maybe live streaming me shaping, or any other shaper for that matter, not just me, but when I was shaping, I was thinking, where is my pinky right now? How am I holding the plane to be able to let go of the plane with one hand and go around that corner? The average person picking up that plane or the surf form or whatever, then they're not going to see that unless I slow it right down and show them. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach people the craft. Amazing. And I'm really excited about it. It's like, I know I don't have time to do it now, but I'm fit and healthy, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to have a whole bunch of fun doing it. And it's going to give me a sense of joy to do it. Listen, I want to go back down the sustainability rabbit hole just briefly. FireWire, in my opinion, seemed to pave the way in terms of being the most recognisable, eco-friendly surf brand who were actively promoting that. How much input did you have into that direction of the company?
To be perfectly honest, not a lot.
Okay.
The team that we have at FireWire are pretty much the same team that we had when we started, which is just incredible. We're talking 2005-06, and now even after Kelly taking control of the company, Kelly just went, I love the technology.
Did you sell your share to Kelly?
Well,
what's your involvement now?
Zero.
Okay.
So I got out completely, but Kelly bought a significant chunk, controlling chunk of the company from other shareholders, which worked out really well for everybody. We're all happy. So that whole process of me stepping away from FireWire, sorry, I've forgotten the train of thought. What was the question?
Like FireWire as a brand, being
sustainability,
recognisably eco-friendly. Like it's definitely the core of the brand's motivation.
Totally. So Mark Price, he was the head of Gotcha, Rip Curl, Reef Brazil. We had hunted him. Dougal Walker from Billabong wanted Mark Price. He tried to get Mark Price for Billabong the years before, and he wouldn't come across. We made the original boards that we did, that was the original technology, that was Bert Berger, and me collaborating with Bert to make a whole bunch of boards to give all the pro surfers. So Mick and Joel and Taj and Kelly and Andy and everything got given boards to try. They were Nevs at the time, they weren't FireWires. So that whole process ended up with Mark getting a board and going, I'm on board, I'm coming. Just from the fact of writing this new technology, he was blown away and said, I'm coming on board. Mark is one of the most brilliant CEOs that I've ever seen or met. He understands every single aspect of the company. He's totally he's sustainable from every aspect that you can imagine. So he even drives olive-coloured trucks, and and he was a pro surfer. He was one of Shaun's buddies back in, and I made Mark a couple of boards back in 1980, and he still remembers the boards perfectly, etc. So he's really conscious of the environment. Really calm, cool and collected. So he's driven FireWire down that road. And the team in Thailand, the team in Australia, etc., have worked diligently and pushed the envelope and actually led the industry into this. And I don't care what anybody says, FireWire has led the industry for the last 10 years. They've led the industry not out of PU, but every surfboard company on the planet is using EPS with organic-based epoxy resins like Entropy resin and things like that. When you go into a surfboard factory now, if you go into a like FireWire now, or a lot of factories using more sustainable materials, you don't even need masks. You know,
Right.
entropy resin is an organic-based resin. We use
they-
citrus for instead of acetone. There's no styrene monomers.
Amazing.
It's awesome.
And they're collecting the dust from, and turning it into tiles.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, for you, that must be profoundly satisfying to see that brand go that direction.
I'm the proudest guy on the planet.
Yeah.
I couldn't be more proud.
And is it like, do you think what you birthed has now inspired you in terms of the NevHouse concept? The same line of thinking?
It has to a degree, but I'm not going to claim... all I'm going to claim with FireWire is that it was my epiphany moment that I realised that I needed to machine a board 100%. So at a point in time, I was running around selling machines, but we still couldn't cut a board 100%, even with that technology. So we came up with the idea of a multi-layered, multi-density foam, square block of foam that we could cut 100%. Then I met Bert Berger. Then Bert comes on with his technology. So, and then we evolved FireWire with the FST technology to the point where Kelly was very involved in 2006, not involved, interested. A lot of pro surfers were interested. It was too early for Kelly back then. His relationship with Al Merrick was awesome and still is. So, but it evolved. When it became more about the environment and sustainability, that's when the other guys like Rowan and Nathan Adamowitz and other guys the R&D team in Thailand, working with Mark and the team in California, just started nailing it. Just started getting, the Ecos board initiatives, the sustainable stoke things and all the stuff that FireWire instigated or worked with those companies to make sure that this was going to happen. That's all their gig. I'm doing NevHouse, which seems to correlate. I don't think it inspired me to do anything more with NevHouse. This was a journey that I started that I wasn't even intending to, as I said earlier.
It chose
just
you,
evolved.
Nev.
It chose me, I guess so. And FireWire, the funny thing about FireWire is that, as you pointed out, those tiles they're making from...
Amazing.
200 boards a day of foam, wood, resin, fiberglass particle on the ground, which was going to landfill, is now being turned into tiles. But guess what? I haven't run it past them yet, but I want... Don't make tiles out of them and give them away. It's nice. Please ship it to me because I'll turn it into houses. And that would be that would just be awesome if I was able to do that.
Yeah. They could be the bathrooms in the Nev houses.
Could be. I'd rather see it as the panels of the homes.
So, Nev, you've been in Burleigh for the last month, really promoting the Nev house fundamentally, but also relaying some really powerful messages around sustainability. And the conviction that you've displayed to me has been inspiring, and I think inspiring of a lot of other people. And I've seen you speak on a panel of a lot of other movers and shakers. How are you feeling after a month doing this?
Oh, hang on. After 6 years of doing this song.
Actually, after the last 4 weeks, but...
Exactly.
How you personally feeling, where you're at with NevHouse? Is there anxiety?
Oh, yeah. There's lots of that because I'll start with the end and I'll come back. So the end, not the end, but where I'm at right now. To be at Keramas, invited by Corona, Parlay for the Ocean and the World Surfing League, to have a NevHouse on the beach at Keramas, the La Casa Corona creative studio that Corona has embraced, because they were doing the La Casa initiative for creatives to go to all around the world, to become a think tank for the environment, for social good, and use creatives to think of other ways we can impact everything. To then embrace NevHouse as the La Casa. In my wildest dreams, I couldn't have imagined this.
Was this like another landmark moment, like when Shaun Tomson wanted to ride your boards and you got in the car and wound the windows up and screamed?
I mean, seriously, I get a call. It started with Dave Simons, who's down at the event, great buddy of mine from the Gold Coast, long-term surfing buddy, who I reached out to late last year because things were getting a bit tight with the dollars. This all looks glossy from the outside, but let me tell you, an entrepreneur does cause a lot of harm to people around them. The cost of doing what I'm doing to me and my family and people around me has been significant.
Beyond financial.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Financial and beyond financial. So I reached out to Dave, and he reignited the conversation that I'd had with Tony Cannon, who owns Commune. Because Tony approached me 18 months ago and said, Nev, the waste going down the rivers into the ocean here is just a nightmare. We need to do something. We need to build one of your plants here. It was that vague. Let's try and put a NevHouse on the beach. And this was last year. I said, Tony, I'm not ready. I can't do it. And then we re-engaged. And then I got introduced to Monster Children Creative, who are the advertising agency behind Corona and WSL and Parlay for the Ocean for this whole initiative. And the conversations went into, hang on a sec, Nev, last year Bali Protected was about single-use plastics. How can we encourage the world through the platform that we've got through the World Surf League's incredible platform and Corona's incredible platform to tell the world, let's stop using straws and plastic bags. The result has been incredible. Look what's happening. We have reduction of use of single-use plastics, and it's happening on a global scale. So what happened was, all of a sudden I get a call. We have a discussion with Monster Children Creative, with Corey and Kieran from there, and they said, Nev, look, we're going to pitch to Corona in New York the idea of NevHouse being here. And they sent me the pitch, and I went, am I really reading this? Is this NevHouse in the same breath as Corona and Parlay for the Ocean and the World Surf League? And for me personally, over the years, as I was developing Jet, which became NevHouse, I was surreptitiously trying to encourage the industry to back me, because I knew this would be an awesome thing for the surf industry to back. But all along, it was too early. You know, I couldn't get the support. I ran it past Rip Curl and Billabong, and I spoke to guys. I've spoke to Kelly about it over the years. But in every case, through no fault of their own, it was too early for NevHouse. I was too much of a startup. I hadn't achieved enough. Now, we've delivered. We've done all the things we said we're going to do. I've got, without sounding, boasting, but we've got global recognition for this. I've got people from Coachella to presidents to the royal family to, rock stars and people, movie stars that want to back it when we're right, through to the local people in the street, to Bunjars here, to, where I've been over the last couple of years, again, not trying to embellish it too much, it's been an incredible journey. And I'm excited about it, but we're still being regarded as a startup.
What's keeping you going, though? Like, is it this desire to change the world, or is it a combination of I want to change the world, save the world, and I want to make sure this business is successful because I don't want to lose it all?
Yeah. Do
you feel like this is the pinnacle of your career and everything you've done has built to this?
Yes, to a point, but I'll tell you what my priorities are.
Yep.
My priorities are my family.
It's been a journey, Nev.
Okay,
family is important.
My priorities are my family, my friends, my shareholders first. Because people very close to me invested in me. My wife invested in me. My shareholders invested in me. And I'm not saying that, again, that they invested in... a lot of my shareholders invested in Nev before it became FireWire, which evolved into NevHouse. And I've put them through, the journey, whatever has put them through a long, difficult scenario. And I've had people clearly try to take advantage of me and try to take advantage of the thing that we were trying to do. Now, again, I didn't set out to do this. I set out to this to get a return on my investment first. And then all of a sudden I'm trapped into the investment because that deal fell through.
Yep.
Then I had to keep going. And keeping going was my... In 1982, when I got out of the water at Pipeline, my car was a Cadillac covered in mud. And my guys, my friends, the Hawaiians, used to call me from a distance, hey, Neva, hey, brother. They never said Nev. It was Neva. So what do I see when I get out of my car? On the side of my car, Larry Bertleman and Vince Klein and Liddell and those guys had graffitied on the side of my car, never mind, NEVAMIND, never say never. I used that on my surfboards for the next 5 or 8 years. It became my own mantra. And then it was never look back. So I had never say never before James Bond and Justin Bieber did. I had never mind before Nirvana did. Yeah. And that's nothing. I'm not claiming anything. I'm just saying it's funny. But it is. I had a shareholder say to me recently, one of my dear friends who's been with me on this road all the way through, said, Nev, you are the most tenacious bastard I've ever met.
Resilient.
And resilient, and that's not a boast. I'm just saying I can't give up. I won't give up. I won't give up on my shareholders. I won't give up. So I won't, and that might sound melodramatic, but
it doesn't.
But I've never failed in business. I won't fail on the people around me. I've got incredible traction on this story. I've got unbelievable people. Who are backing me, and I will so what's driving me is two things are driving me. Everything I just said, and now I feel like the responsibility that's been put squarely on my shoulders, and I didn't ask for it. I didn't go out seeking it. And it's not. I'm not saying it to make myself out to be anything special. I'm not. I'm just a ginger from Western Australia. But the point is that this, it would be an absolute tragedy if this didn't transpire. It'd be a tragedy on so many levels, as I was alluding to, I've had a couple of issues over the last year with people that have tried to take advantage of me, and people that are so selfish in their own self, whatever that means, to actually put their interests over what I'm trying to do, question what I'm trying to do, question my integrity and my ethics, and even some of my shareholders. We've got 150 shareholders. 4 or 5 shareholders have questioned my integrity. I will fight that until the last ounce that I have, because I know for a fact, and everybody who knows me and knows around me, I have not done anything but do the right thing by my shareholders, and we've had a rocky road to get here. Capital and cash flow is a killer. And I've had to go through this journey being hitting walls with government, hitting walls with mistakes in the direction we've taken to try and raise significant capital, €200 million in Europe, and be told by billionaires who can't access their own money. I'll give you a prime example. I sat with a company in Luxembourg. It's worth $245 billion under management. They invited me. I've spent my own money through this whole thing, all the way through. All my shareholders, my best friends, Casey Bridge and Hayden Filer, and my buddies, my brother Graham. We have worked this. And we get to Luxembourg, and we are being told that you're going to raise this money to build these plants around the world, to take waste out of the environment. And what you're doing, Mr. Hyman, is the most amazing thing. Winning Pictured Palace and all these billionaires saying, wonderful, I'm thinking we've nailed it. The world's my oyster. We're going to be able to raise this money and get going. But guess what? People that have billions of dollars can't spend their own money. There's multiple levels of compliance, and there's mandates. Oh, sir, yes, you're really excited about this thing about NevHouse, but if you really want to do something for the environment, go and invest in that wind farm over there, because they've had 5 years of business. If I hear somebody say to me, Nev, you're a startup, I want to see 5 years of hang on. There's companies that are around the world that are investing billions of dollars in a fusion plant in France that has a turnkey in 2025 and they don't even know if it's going to work. Yeah. I'm saying I've got a solution that I can implement immediately, turnkey it in 6 to 8 months, maybe a year, immediately start taking waste out of the environment and stop waste going into the ocean. I can do that immediately. Boyan Sluts from the Great Ocean Cleanup, the utmost respect for what that young man's done. Incredible. It's rocket science. It's a serious gig. And he got that funding through Silicon Valley because of a viral video. I'm trying to tell a message that can really have a significant impact. We need that level of support from people that are prepared to go, well, one day's dividends would actually pay for that plant. Yeah. I stood on the stage in Luxembourg with Bob Geldof, Gina Miller. I was invited, and the topic of that conversation was, what can the finance industry do for society and the environment? Yeah. I stood on that stage and I said, this is my last gig. This was 8 months after me winning Pitch at Palace. And I'm going, we still hadn't raised any money because we were trying to raise €200 million. That was a mistake. We should have gone in small and tried to grow organically. But we were told by that industry, you will raise the money for all the reasons, because of the etc. So there I am, and I've actually done this gig on stage and said, forget your balance sheets just for a moment. Here's a solution. We're ready to go. One day's dividends from this group would pay for a plant. Yeah, nothing. They're talk fests. And I'm not being disrespectful. But, I know I can go back to them.
Yeah, and I guess the fundamental difference is they don't have their name on it. Yeah. They don't have their face on it.
No.
So talk is easy.
Yeah.
And talk is cheap.
Yeah.
And I also fundamentally believe that control is an illusion. And what's become very apparent to me after hearing your story and your journey is that this chose, it seems to me that this project chose you.
Yeah.
And until someone is ready to go to the level of commitment that you have, which is vast, let's, is that what you're hanging on?
Yeah, because it's been such a complicated journey, and every entrepreneur has gone through this. Yeah. Steve Jobs, come on, hello. 10 years it took him.
To break down the doors.
10 years as a startup.
Break down the doors.
Yep. And the journey that he went through, read his book. It's incredible. Read Elon Musk's book. I mean, these guys, I've never been bankrupt. I've never failed. I've certainly failed a lot of people around me because of the journey that we've been through. Yeah. But until I fail, I'm going to keep going. And I know that this will succeed because I know that what I'm saying is completely achievable. So it's just a matter of time. And we're at that tipping point right now. I believe that so implicitly, because when you're being supported by a group like Corona, I mean, if Felipe from Corona hugged me one more time before he left about how wonderful this collaboration is, it means that now we have a voice and we can tell the story. And people have been critical of what we've done because they said, well, look, you did that thing in Vanuatu, that was awesome, but what have you done since? Yeah. Hang on, we were distracted. And I have to say that I spent the last of last year, 8 months, fighting 2 legal battles. And I'm going to say it on the record, and I don't care anymore, that these individuals were so selfish that they could have completely ruined something that is a global solution.
Greed-based?
And greed-based that actually ended up, could have completely destroyed the investment that all the people invested in me in, ruined that for their own greed. And I have no problem saying that. And then because of that, we've had a few investors who are trying to criticise me and my ethics, which really gets my goat. Because everyone around me knows that me and my team, this is not all about me, okay? It's Absolutely. My name, I've got an incredible team of ethical people, and that stymied our growth for well over a year, completely stymied it. So we have now come out of that, we're clear of it, we're ready, we can turnkey, we're ready to go. And we've got this support. And we're off to Jeffreys Bay. We hope to do this again in South Africa, then on the Gold Coast early next year with Corona and WSL and Parlay for the Ocean. the world is NevHouse's oyster at the moment. That's the way I feel. I'm really, really excited. And I'm incredibly proud that maybe we can actually introduce something that when I'm 90 and I'm surfing out at Waikiki on a longboard, because that's the only thing I can probably surf on, I'm going to be going, thank God for the people around me that stood by me. Not these, and I'm not going to dwell on the negativity.
I get it.
Yeah, the people that backed me and believed in it and opened their checkbooks, not that they exist anymore, and backed something that can have a real impact. That's why I'm here.
Nev, it's been epic. It's been 2 hours and 13 minutes. You're an inspiration. You're out of your comfort zone. It's actually a beautiful thing to witness from the outside. There's a quote that has just come to my mind, and it just resonates with what you're saying, and it goes, it's always the darkest before the dawn. And for some reason it just came to me as you were speaking then. And I feel that you're fighting a good fight. Please keep fighting that fight. And I hope that it inspires other people who are in the trenches like yourself, and there's many out there, to keep going. Because there's value in it. Like you said, everyone that you talk to about it, myself included, when I heard about the concept, were very attracted to it. Everyone around the school is talking about it. You're speaking at the bridge tomorrow to a different audience within our community. I've been talking with the other teachers that run the SO program, and they're joking about how can we get Nev some money? And I don't have solutions, but I do know that the conviction that you have, I feel will carry you over the line, and you will learn something. If you haven't, probably that sounds a bit, altruistic, but you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
And I just want to thank you so much for giving me some of your time. I kind of feel like it's a little bit funny that we were going to speak at the start of your visit to Burleigh, and now we're getting to talk at the end of your visit, and that just reinforces to me that things happen as they're meant to happen.
Absolutely.
And I feel that it actually made for a more authentic and enriching conversation. Thanks, Nev. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I just looking out there at this incredible place, and I'm just privileged to be here. We could be sitting in some cafe in New York or something.
Yeah.
This is just unbelievable. I'm actually looking out and seeing a giant leaf that looks like a tomo. I'm seeing a surfboard in the giant leaf out there.
That's where he gets his inspiration.
I'm sure
wondering.
He does. Yeah.
All right, mate. We'll leave it there.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Thanks,
really
brother.
appreciate it. Thanks, Shannon.
And we're back with Nev. We've had a bit of a break, and Nev and I have just been talking, and Nev's so passionate and very much the accurate and concise craftsman that he is, being a surfboard shaper of many years, and he has something he wants to add, and I really respect that. So, Nev, we were talking about the plastics again, and we both feel that it's very important that we record this information because it's important. So, what did you want to relay about that?
Well, like I said earlier, there's elements of what I'm doing that could be regarded as being controversial or whatever, because there is an incredible movement globally to reduce and reuse and stop single-use plastics, all of which I'm 110% behind.
Yes.
What my problem is with true recycling, the cost of recycling in many cases exceeds the cost of using virgin plastic. Controversial.
Aha.
So let's just use the typical scenario of the PET bottle.
Yes.
We have the thing called the container deposit scheme, different names around the world. Great idea, false economy.
Gotcha.
It costs the Australian government $600 million a year to operate this scheme. Where were those bottles going prior to the scheme? They were being picked up in yellow bins and then going to a MRF, a materials recovery facility, and they were being collected. And then they were being taken by the recyclers and turned into other bottles, etc. With the container deposit scheme, it's encouraging locals to actually get the bottles and put them, and theoretically to stop them from going onto the ground. In Australia, in the US, some of them went on the ground, but most of them went into the recycle bin up until the start of the container deposit scheme. The current statistics are 80% of those bottles still go to the MRFs. Right. 20% are being collected by individuals. But what's happening is those individuals have a tendency to be the lower socioeconomic groups, which is fine. We're helping them. That's great. They take their bottles to the centres. There's a huge carbon footprint for all that to happen. That's not my main issue. It takes 50 small PET bottles for a kilo of PET, virgin PET.
Right, I did not know that.
Yep.
Okay.
And that works out to be about $5 a kilo. The reason it works out to be $5 a kilo when you're recycling it is because the Australian government are getting consumers to pay 10 cents a bottle, so we're paying for it. There's a subsidy of between 4 and 6 cents that it's costing the government to make it all work. So it's 14 to 16 cents a bottle that is coming out of all of our pockets to recycle that bottle.
Gotcha.
I don't even know if the $600 million a year is calculated within that. Maybe it is with the subsidy.
Okay, so you're saying it's flawed?
It's flawed because...
And so what's the main point you're getting at then, if it's flawed?
The main point I'm getting at is that if we continue to use single-use plastics... if we continue to use virgin plastic to make PET bottles...
Yep.
It has less of a carbon footprint to use virgin plastic than it does recycling it. Only if there is a solution like NevHouse to take all of that, all of the codes of plastic, including PET, and turn it into something that the world needs, like housing. Okay. Because it's very simple to do it our way, which is one bin. Mm-hmm. So you imagine all the bins around the world. Yeah. Every capital city, every municipality has spent all these hundreds of millions of dollars setting up these collection programs and the training and this whole continue.
Then the education of society.
Mm.
Yeah, like
look at the big
actually
picture.
Asking societies to change the culture of societies as well, which takes time. And it's funny that you mention it because Mike Long from Burleigh had a chat with him the other day, and he said, the world has been trying to recycle now actively for over 20 years, and in his opinion, in his opinion, it's failed time and time again. Because the systems are, to some extent, too complex and hard to integrate into daily life.
I'll tell
Do
you
agree with that?
The exact reason why it's failed is that, A, the bins were being collected, let's just say the bins in Australia.
Yep.
They were going to the MRFs and 20 to 30% of that bin was being recycled. And the rest was being baled and sent to China.
Gotcha.
It stopped. So now there is no value still in Australia for those low-grade plastics. So it has failed. So now it's probably worse than what it was 10 years ago. The plastic is mounting up in Australia. I've been offered, for NevHouse, I've been offered to take plastic, to be paid $50 to $150 a tonne to take the plastic. There's tens of thousands of tonnes of plastic all over Australia in specific places waiting. If it doesn't get taken by me, it's going to landfill.
So they're dying to offload it. Yeah. But at the moment, you have no way to process it.
No. So I'm reluctant to start telling the real message until we have our A plant or multiple plants operating.
Gotcha.
At that point in time, I will be vocal. At this point in time, I love every single effort that's been put into reducing and reusing. Yeah. I'm just saying that maybe in a few years' time or maybe next year, we will be able to say that, hey, everybody, let's just slow it down a bit. Yeah. Let's have one bin instead of multiple bins. Yeah. Put it all that bin. I'll end with a little analogy with my beautiful wife, Debbie. One day we're standing at the recycling bin, and I was dumping all of the recyclables into the bin. And she said on the top of the bin, oh, what's all those labels? It's contaminated. And I said, no, it's not contaminated. Okay, so actually here's a battery. I've just chuck the battery in. Not really, but now I've contaminated that bin. Who knows the bin's contaminated? Mm-hmm. Does the truck driver know it's contaminated? No. He picks up the bin, he takes it to the MRF.
I do that all the time.
He goes into the MRF, it goes through the system, and the only reason those labels on the top of the bin is to make it easier for the MRF to recycle it doesn't contaminate the whole system. It doesn't stop the system. It makes it easier. So what I'm saying is we have a thing called a NERF, a Nev Earth Resource Facility. We have a materials recovery facility and the manufacturing thing to make the panels, the CRPP. And we have a waste-to-energy system. We close the loop. That's my ultimate goal. No waste going to landfill. The residual waste that was going to go to landfill that we can't do anything with, we turn into energy with our proprietary, through a consortium partner of ours, waste-to-energy.
Wow.
That system will close the loop with waste-to-energy. We can mine landfill.
Wow.
We can literally take a scoop of landfill, spin it at a radical speed.
I'm
Paper,
surprised.
cardboard and plastic go out the top. Organic material go down the bottom. The middle goes into a secondary combustion system.
Yeah.
We turn that into energy, power the whole plant, get our waste for nothing.
See,
Hallelujah.
I hear that. I'm just like, I'm surprised it hasn't been thought of before. Or has it?
It's
But no
pieces of the jigsaw.
Okay.
All we're doing is taking existing pieces of
Yeah.
the jigsaw and putting it together
Okay.
with a system that allows us to recycle without concern about contamination and commingled waste. That's simple.
There you go. That's so interesting. I didn't know that the plant itself could be self-sustaining. Amazing.